She was thrown out onto the street like a dog, because she smelled of rubbish, unaware that in her dirty sack she carried a fortune capable of buying their entire lives. When they discovered the truth, their repentance came too late. Welcome to Footprints of the Soul. Today, we bring you a shocking story about the test of poverty, a divine lesson that shows us that blood makes you relatives, but only loyalty makes you family. Get ready, because you are about to witness how greed receives its just punishment. The midday sun in Nigeria's northern border region didn't warm. It punished, beating down on the cracked asphalt of the dusty road, creating mirages of water that danced on the horizon like mocking ghosts. It was one of those scorching afternoons where the air felt heavy in the lungs, and even the cicadas seemed to beg for mercy with their monotonous, desperate song. Amina tightened her hands on the steering wheel of her old '98 Ford pickup. The vehicle, a beast of tired metal and peeling paint, trembled and coughed with every kilometer, as if sharing its owner's exhaustion. The air conditioning had died 2 summers ago, just a week after Musa's funeral. Now, the hot wind rushing through the open windows brought no relief, but rather the salty taste of dust and the acrid smell of burnt grass. "Are we there yet, Mama?" a tiny voice asked from the passenger seat. Amina turned her head for a moment, tearing her gaze from the endless road. Zara, her 6-year-old daughter, hugged Boli, a one-eyed stuffed rabbit that had long lost its original whiteness, tightly against her chest. The girl's cheeks were flushed from the heat, and her hair was plastered to her forehead with sweat. "Almost, my darling. Just a little more," Amina lied, forcing a smile that didn't reach her dark eyes. The truth was that the trip to the market to sell the few baskets of yams the dry earth had given them hadn't yielded enough. In the pocket of her apron, Amina felt the light weight of a few crumpled naira notes. It wasn't enough. Never enough. The loan on Amina's haven, their homestead, was a rope that tightened a little more around her neck each month, suffocating the dreams she and Musa had sown with so much love. "Oh, Musa, if you could see me now," Amina thought, feeling that familiar pain in the center of her chest, an emptiness that neither time nor hard work could fill. Since the tractor overturned that morning, leaving her a widow at 28, Amina had had to harden her heart to survive. But hardness didn't pay the bills, and faith, though immense, didn't stop the bank collectors. Suddenly, something broke the monotony of the desert landscape. About 200 meters away, a dark figure stood silhouetted against the blinding glare of the sun. At first, Amina thought it was a fallen pole, or perhaps a roadkill animal. But as the pickup advanced, devouring the asphalt, the form came to life. A painful, slow life. It was a woman, or what was left of her. She walked along the gravel shoulder, hunched over at an almost impossible angle, as if carrying all the world's sins on her shoulders. She wore black rags, several sizes, too big for her skeletal body, and a tattered headscarf offered little protection against the ferocity of the Nigerian sun. But what chilled Amina's blood, despite the infernal heat, was what the woman dragged. A huge, dirty burlap sack that scraped against the ground, raising clouds of dust. Even over the roar of the pickup's engine, she could hear the metallic, mournful clinking of hundreds of empty cans striking each other. Clank, clank, clank. The sound of absolute misery. "Mama, look at that woman," Zara whispered, pressing her little nose against the window glass, her eyes wide with childish awe and fear. Amina instinctively slowed down. Her farmer's eyes, accustomed to reading nature's signs, read in that old woman the signs of imminent death. She saw how the woman's legs trembled violently with each step. She saw the skin on her arms, tanned and dry like old leather, and she saw that she wore no proper shoes, only rubber sandals that left her feet exposed to the scorching stones. "Keep going, Amina," a fearful voice whispered in her mind, the voice of survival. "You barely have enough fuel to get home. You have no money to give alms. Don't get into trouble. The world is full of mad people." The old woman stumbled. It was a slight movement, a loss of balance caused by dehydration and extreme exhaustion. She fell to her knees on the sharp gravel, but didn't let go of her sack. She clutched that bag of rubbish as if it were a treasure of gold and diamonds, as if it were the only thing anchoring her to the land of the living. Amina's heart gave a violent lurch. In that fall, she saw her own grandmother, she saw her mother, she saw the cruel fate awaiting the forgotten. And she remembered the words Musa always said when he shared his tuwo with migrant laborers. "No one is so poor that they cannot give, nor so rich that they do not need to receive, Amina. God measures us by what we give when we lack, not when we have abundance." "We can't leave her there, Zara," Amina murmured, more to herself than to the child. Her voice sounded firm, erasing the fear. "She's all alone, Mama. Like my little rabbit when I found him," the girl replied, hugging her stuffed animal tighter. Amina stepped on the brake. The old tires shrieked in protest against the hot asphalt, and the pickup pulled over, raising a golden, dense cloud of dust that enveloped the vehicle for a few seconds. The silence that followed the engine's shutdown was crushing. Only the buzzing of flies could be heard, and in the distance, the hoarse gasping of the fallen woman. Amina opened the door, and the heat hit her face like a physical slap. She got out carefully, smoothing her simple floral cotton dress, and signaled to Zara, "Stay here, my love. Don't get down until I tell you. Lock the door." She walked toward the figure on the ground. The sound of her own steps crunching on the gravel seemed deafening. As she approached, the smell hit her before she could see the details. It smelled of stale sweat, dry urine, and clothes that hadn't seen soap in months. It was the smell of human abandonment in its rawest form. The old woman, hearing the footsteps, hunched over herself. She slowly turned her head like a beaten animal, expecting the final blow. Amina stopped dead. What she saw on that woman's face stole her breath. Beneath the dirt, the deep wrinkles like river canyons, and the tangled gray hair, there were eyes, stormy gray eyes, veiled by cataracts and dry tears, but distilling such pure terror and such broken dignity that Amina wanted to cry right there. "Don't hit me! Please, don't take my cans! It's all I have," the old woman croaked. Her voice sounded like dry leaves dragged by the wind, broken by thirst. Amina felt a pang of indignation. Who had hurt this woman so much that her first reaction was to beg for mercy over empty cans? "No one is going to hurt you, Mama," Amina said, softening her tone to a whisper, kneeling on the scorching earth, not caring about staining her dress. "I'm Amina. I just want to help you." The old woman blinked in disbelief. She looked at Amina's hands, hard-working hands, rough, but extended with an open palm. No weapons, no stones. "Water?" the old woman asked, the word coming out as a painful moan. I am very thirsty." Amina didn't think. She turned on her heels and ran to the pickup. "Zara, pass me the water bottle, the big one. Quick." The woman on the ground, whom the world would later know as Mama Adewale, looked up at the blinding sky through the slits of her swollen eyelids. "God, if this is the angel of death coming for me, what soft hands he has," she thought, her mind clouded by heat stroke. But it wasn't death that awaited her on that forgotten road. It was the beginning of a trial that would shake the foundations of two families. Amina ran back, unscrewing the bottle cap as she knelt again. With infinite tenderness, she lifted the old woman's head, supporting her fragile neck, and brought the container to her cracked lips. "Slowly, Mama, slowly." The water spilled down her dirty chin, washing streaks of dirt, as the old woman drank with a desperation that broke the soul. In that moment, under the relentless Nigerian sun, two destinies crossed, sealed not by a contract, but by a sip of warm water. What Amina didn't know, as she held that woman who looked like a beggar, was that she was holding the key to her own future and the sword that would cut off the heads of avarice. The sound of water gurgling in the old woman's parched throat was the only noise that broke the desert's silence for a few eternal seconds. Amina held the tilted bottle, watching as life slowly returned to the eyes of that human being who seemed to have been spat out by the earth itself. When the bottle was empty, Mama Adewale let out a long sigh, a sound that came from the depths of her being, a mixture of relief and shame. She lowered her gaze, unable to meet the compassionate eyes of the young stranger. Her hands, deformed by arthritis and black with grime, trembled violently in her lap. "God bless you, my daughter," Adewale murmured, her voice raspy like sandpaper on wood. "May God's grace cover you." No one had stopped. Everyone passed by as if I were a dead dog. Amina felt a pang in her heart. It wasn't just pity. It was a dull rage against the world's indifference. "It's all right, Mama. You're not alone anymore," Amina said, wiping a drop of water that was trickling down the old woman's chin with the sleeve of her dress. At that moment, the pickup door opened with a metallic creak. "Mama!" Amina turned her head, alarmed. "Zara, I told you to stay inside." But the girl was already there, standing on the hot gravel with her worn little shoes and her Sunday dress already soiled with dust. She approached with hesitant steps toward the woman who smelled of rubbish and loneliness. In her hands, she clutched Boli, the one-eyed rabbit. Mama Adewale shrank, trying to make herself small, trying to hide her own filth from the child's purity. "Don't come closer, child. I smell bad. I'm rubbish," the old woman sobbed, covering her face with her dirty hands. Zara didn't stop. She stood in front of her and, with that instinctive wisdom possessed only by children and saints, extended her stuffed animal to the old woman. "Here," Zara said with her sweet, firm voice. "Boli will take care of you. He doesn't care if you smell bad. He's old too." Adewale slowly lowered her hands. She looked at the worn and loved stuffed rabbit, and then at the girl's big, dark eyes. Something broke inside her. The mask of survival she had worn for weeks cracked, letting out a torrent of tears that carved paths of pale skin through the dirt on her cheeks. "Why?" Adewale groaned, taking the rabbit with a reverence one would give to a sacred relic. "Why are you good to me?" Amina stood up, dusting off her knees, feeling the sun burn her neck. She looked toward the empty road, toward the nothingness from which this woman had come. "Because we are human beings, Mama, and because no one deserves to be abandoned here like an old junk." Amina put a hand on the old woman's shoulder, ignoring the grime on her clothes. "Where are you going? Do you have family we can call?" There was nothing for 50 kilometers around. The question hung in the hot air, heavy as a tombstone. Adewale pressed her lips together, and her expression changed from pain to a cold, hard bitterness. She looked at her swollen feet, and then up at Amina with a sincerity that chilled the blood. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm just walking away from them," she said, and every word dripped venom. "My children, Kunle and Yemisi." Amina frowned. "You're lost? They're looking for you?" Adewale let out a dry, humorless laugh that sounded like bones breaking. "Look for me?" she spat with contempt. "They threw me out. They changed the locks on my own house. They told me I was a nuisance, that I was too old, that I smelled of illness, and that they were embarrassed for their friends to see me." Amina felt the air leave her lungs. The cruelty was unimaginable. "They told me, go to a state home or die on the street, but you no longer fit here. They took everything from me, my daughter, even my dignity." Adewale pointed to the burlap sack. "This is the only thing they let me take. Cans I collect, so I don't starve. That's what my life is worth to them." Crushed aluminum. The image of children dragging their mother out of her home, slamming the door in her face, burned itself into Amina's mind. She remembered Musa, who cried silently every Mother's Day because he never knew his own. And now here was this woman, discarded by those who should kiss the ground she walked on. Amina looked at Zara, who fearlessly caressed the old woman's dirty hand. Then she looked at her old pickup. She thought about the half-empty pantry at the homestead, the debts, the uncertainty. "You can't, Amina. You barely have enough to eat yourself." Logic screamed in her head. But then a sudden breeze moved the old woman's headscarf, revealing a profile, the curve of her nose, the shape of her forehead. A chill ran down Amina's spine. It was absurd, impossible, but for a second, she thought she saw Musa in the face of that stranger. "Blood calls," the elders used to say. And Amina, a woman of faith, decided to listen. "You're not staying here," Amina declared, with that strength that came to her when defending what was right. Adewale looked at her, startled. No, I don't want to bother. I'll continue on my way. God will provide." "God has already provided, Mama. He put my truck on your path." Amina bent down and took the old woman's arm firmly but gently. "Let's go home. At Amina's haven, we don't have luxuries. Sometimes we eat gari with groundnuts, but there's always a roof and a prayer. But I'm dirty. I'll stay in your car," Adewale protested, trying to pull back, clinging to her shame. "The car can be washed with water and soap, Mama. But conscience, that cannot be cleaned if I leave you here to your fate," Amina replied, looking into the old woman's gray eyes. "And that sack comes with us." Amina walked toward the sack of cans. When she tried to lift it, she was surprised by the weight. It was extremely heavy. It was the weight of days of humiliation under the sun, of bending 1,000 times for a few naira. With a grunt of effort, she hoisted it and threw it into the back of the pickup among the empty vegetable baskets. She returned and, with Zara's help, helped Mama Adewale to her feet. The old woman was light as a bird, consumed by her recent hard life. "Come, Grandma," Zara said, taking her hand. "You can sit on my side." Hearing the word grandma, Adewale closed her eyes, and a solitary tear traced a new path on her dirty face. Her own grandchildren, Kunle's children, didn't even look her in the face, absorbed in their expensive tablets and phones. And this strange child offered her a title she thought she had lost forever. They got into the pickup. The interior smelled of trapped heat and dust, but to Adewale, as she sank into the passenger seat, it seemed like the most luxurious carriage in the world. Amina started the engine, which roared in protest, before turning over. She looked at her new passenger, who was hugging Boli and looking out the window with disbelief, as if afraid of waking from a dream. My name is Amina, and she is Zara. I am Adewale, the old woman replied, and for the first time in months, her name didn't sound like a condemnation, but a promise. Amina shifted into first gear, and the pickup returned to the road, moving away from the place where death had been waiting. As she drove, Amina kept glancing at Adewale. There was something about her, a mystery wrapped in rags. What Amina didn't know was that in the back, inside that dirty sack, among the crushed beer and soda cans, there was a double bottom, hand-stitched, and in that double bottom, wrapped in black plastic to protect them from rain and sweat, were the original documents for an oil property worth more than the entire village combined. But Adewale said nothing. The test of poverty had just begun. She wanted to know if this stranger's kindness was real, or if, like her children, she would discard her once she saw she was a difficult burden to carry. The sun began to set, painting the desert a blood red, foreshadowing that the coming storm would not be of rain, but of justice. The final stretch to Amina's haven passed in a reverent silence, broken only by the rhythmic rattling of the pickup over the potholes of the dirt track. The sun was beginning to hide, painting the sky in shades of burnt violet and orange colors that in the desert herald the arrival of night's coolness. Amina turned the steering wheel sharply to enter through the main gate. The wooden sign hanging from the entrance arch was lopsided, held by a single rusty nail, and the white paint had peeled so much that the name Amina's Haven was barely legible. To Mama Adewale's eyes, accustomed to the laser-trimmed gardens and marble fountains of her son Kunle's estate, this looked like a graveyard of broken dreams. The fields on both sides of the road were yellowed, thirsty, crying out to the sky for rain that hadn't fallen in months. Old machinery covered with blue tarps stood like sleeping giants, lacking diesel or spare parts. "We're here," Amina announced, turning off the engine in front of a mud and wood house. The structure was humble, with a wide porch where a lone rocking chair swayed in the wind. 3 stray dogs emerged from under the house, barking not with menace, but with the boisterous joy of those welcoming their pack. "Quiet, quiet," Zara ordered, jumping down, and the dogs calmed, wagging their tails and sniffing the air with curiosity toward the strange visitor. Amina walked around the vehicle and opened the passenger door. Mama Adewale tried to get out, but her legs, stiff from the journey and weakness, failed her. Amina supported her by the waist, not caring that the old woman's stale scent would cling to her clothes. "Lean on me, Mama. I am your staff now." They entered the house. The first thing that struck Adewale was not the poverty, which was evident in the mended furniture and polished cement floor, but the smell. It smelled of home, of burning firewood in the stove, of freshly made akara, and cheap lavender soap. It was an aroma that transported her 50 years back to her mother's kitchen, before money and oil poisoned her blood. "Sit here on the sofa. It's the most comfortable we have," Amina said, guiding her to a piece of furniture covered with a hand-stitched patchwork quilt to hide the worn upholstery. Adewale sank down, feeling her bones appreciate the rest. Her eyes, still adjusting to the dimness of the room, illuminated only by a bare bulb, began to survey the place. Everything was impeccably clean. There was no dust. Despite living in the middle of a dry land, there was dignity in that poverty. On the wall, a wooden crucifix watched over the room, and below it, on a shelf of the unlit fireplace, there was a small altar with candles and paper flowers. And there it was. Adewale's gaze froze. Her breath caught in her throat, causing a sharp pain in her chest. In the center of the altar, framed in simple wood, was the photograph of a young man with a frank smile, a tilted cowboy hat, and eyes that Adewale knew as well as her own. That man," Adewale stammered, pointing to the photo with a trembling, deformed finger. "Who is he?" Amina, who was serving a glass of fresh water from a clay pot, stopped, her face clouded with a shadow of sadness passing through her dark eyes. She approached the shelf and touched the frame with infinite delicacy. "That's Musa, my husband," Amina replied, and her voice cracked slightly like fine glass. "He passed away 2 years ago. An accident on the farm." Adewale felt the world spin. Musa. The name resonated in her head like a bell. Her sister, Iyabo, whom she hadn't seen for decades due to that stupid family pride, had had a son named Musa. A son whom Iyabo's father, a cruel man, had said was stillborn to separate them. Adewale leaned forward, narrowing her eyes. The man's chin in the photo, that characteristic cleft, was the mark of the Adewales, her family's mark. "My God, is it possible?" Adewale thought, feeling her heart pound like a caged bird. "Have you brought me to my dead nephew's house?" Is this woman my nephew's wife? She wanted to scream. She wanted to say, "It's me. I'm your Aunt Adewale. I have money. I can save you." But she bit her tongue until she tasted the metallic tang of blood. No, she couldn't say it yet. She remembered her own children, Kunle and Yemisi, looking at her with disgust that morning. She remembered how they had thrown her onto the street. If she revealed who she was and what she had, would Amina want her for being family or for being rich? The test of poverty had to continue. She had to be sure, absolutely sure. He looked like a good man, Adewale said, finally swallowing the secret with difficulty. He was the best, Amina sighed, handing her the glass of water. He worked from sunrise to sunset. He loved this land more than anything. That's why I'm still here, fighting against the bank, against the drought, because this land has his sweat. The mention of the bank triggered an alert in Adewale's calculating mind. The bank? She asked, lowering her voice to seem harmless. They want to take the homestead from us? Amina confessed, lowering her gaze in shame. We owe 3 months' payment. If I don't pay before the end of the month, they'll throw us out onto the street. Just like you. The irony struck Adewale like a slap. She, a multimillionaire owner of oil wells, was sitting in the living room of a widow who was about to lose everything, and both shared the same fear of helplessness. "Mama, I'm hungry," Zara interrupted, entering the living room without shoes. Amina shook off the sadness and forced a smile. "Yes, my love. Let's eat dinner." Dinner was the decisive moment. Amina served 3 plates on the small kitchen table. There was no meat, no luxuries. There were watery beans from the pot, and some handmade akara that Amina heated directly over the stove flame. In the center, a small piece of fresh cheese, so small it barely sufficed for 1 person. Adewale watched in silence. She saw how Amina divided the cheese. She put half on Zara's plate, the other half she put on Adewale's plate. "Eat, Mama. You need strength," Amina said, pushing the plate toward her. "And you, my daughter?" Adewale asked, looking at Amina's plate, which only had beans and broth. "I'm not that hungry today. I snacked on something on the way," Amina lied with painful naturalness. Adewale felt a lump in her throat that prevented her from swallowing. She knew it was a lie. She had heard Amina's stomach growl in the truck. This woman, who had nothing, was taking food from her own mouth to give it to an old stranger who smelled of rubbish. Her children, Kunle and Yemisi, had industrial refrigerators full of gourmet food that rotted and was thrown away, and they had denied her a glass of juice that morning. "This is it," Adewale thought, and a tear fell into her clay plate. "This is wealth. Not what I have in the bank, but this." She ate with reverence, savoring the beans as if they were caviar. Every bite was a sacrament of humility. Later, Amina prepared a bed in a small room that served as a storage shed. The sheets were worn, so thin one could almost see through them, but they smelled clean, of sun and wind. "Rest, Mama Adewale. No one will bother you here." "You are safe here," Amina said, turning off the light and leaving a small candle lit on the bedside table. "Tomorrow we will see what to do. God does not close a door without opening a window." When Amina closed the door, Adewale was left alone in the dimness. She got up with difficulty and limped to the window. Outside, the desert sky was bursting with stars, a mantle of diamonds over the dry earth. She bent down and looked under the bed where Amina had put the sack of cans. She reached her hand among the cold, sharp aluminum until she touched the black plastic that enveloped her documents. The property deed, the trust statements, the power of attorney papers worth millions of dollars. She could go out right now, show Amina the papers, and end her suffering. She could buy this homestead 10 times over. She could fill that kitchen with food. But no, Adewale told herself, pressing the papers against her chest. Not yet. I need to see how far the wickedness of my own blood goes, and I need to see if Amina is as strong as she seems. She rehid the treasure in the rubbish. She lay on the humble bed, looking at the ceiling where a crack drew a whimsical map. For the first time in years, Mama Adewale did not feel alone, but the clock was ticking. The bank was lurking for Amina, and her children, the vultures, were surely already celebrating her disappearance. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. The next morning dawned with a sky so blue it hurt the eyes. At Amina's haven, the day began before the sun rose, and Mama Adewale, accustomed to waking to the city's traffic noise or the sterile silence of her empty mansion, opened her eyes to the distant crow of a rooster. She got out of the narrow bed, feeling a stiffness in her back that, curiously, bothered her less than the loneliness of her $1,000 orthopedic bed. Upon entering the kitchen, she found Amina already awake. kneading flour with a hypnotic, almost violent rhythm, as if she wanted to pound her worries against the wooden table. "Good morning, Mama. Did you sleep well?" Amina asked without stopping kneading, though her voice sounded tense, like a guitar string about to snap. "Like a log, my daughter." "It's been years since I slept without pills," Adewale replied, approaching the table. Her hands, deformed but restless, sought something to do. "Let me help you. I'm no good at just sitting and watching." Amina tried to protest, but Adewale had already taken a knife and a sack of potatoes. She began to peel them with skill, an ability she thought forgotten since her youth when she peeled kilos of tubers to help her mother. The smell of damp earth from the potatoes and the aroma of brewing coffee created an atmosphere of domestic peace that, however, was fragile as glass. Mid-morning, the sound of an engine interrupted the routine. It wasn't the roar of a tractor, but the asthmatic hum of the postman's motorcycle. Amina froze, dropping the broom she held in her hand, and looked toward the window with the terror of a cornered animal. "It can't be. It's not the end of the month yet," she whispered, and the color drained from her face, leaving her pale as the flour she had kneaded. She went out to the porch, wiping her sweaty hands on her apron. Adewale followed, staying discreetly in the doorway, observing like a hawk. The postman, an old man named Malam Adu, who knew the misfortunes of every family in the village, handed her an envelope. It wasn't a normal letter. It was an official rectangular envelope with red borders. "I'm very sorry, Amina. It's certified." "You have to sign," Malam Adu said, lowering his gaze to the dusty ground, unable to meet the widow's eyes. Amina signed with a trembling hand. When the motorcycle drove away, raising a cloud of dust that clung to her damp skin, Amina remained static under the scorching sun. She tore open the envelope. The sound of ripping paper echoed like a gunshot in the homestead silence. Her eyes scanned the typewritten lines, cold, legal words that understood nothing of droughts, or mourning, or promises to dead husbands. Imminent foreclosure, eviction in 72 hours, seizure of assets. Amina's knees buckled. She collapsed onto the porch step, crumpling the letter against her chest, as if wanting to suffocate the bad news. She didn't scream. The pain was too great for noise. She only doubled over and began to sob, a dry, choked cry that shook her slender shoulders. Adewale felt a volcanic fury rise through her veins. It wasn't just empathy, it was anger. Anger against banks, against injustice, and against a fate that tormented good people. She approached slowly, the sound of her staff marking her steps. Clack, clack, clack. She sat with difficulty next to Amina and placed her wrinkled hand on the young woman's shoulder. "What's wrong, my child? What does that devil's paper say?" Amina lifted her tear-stained face, her eyes swollen and red. "It's over, Mama Adewale. It's over. Everything," she wailed, her voice a thread of desperation. "They're taking the homestead. They're taking the house. In 3 days, they're throwing us out onto the street." Amina looked toward the dry fields, toward where Zara was playing, chasing butterflies, oblivious to the catastrophe. "I failed Musa. I promised him I'd take care of his land, that Zara would grow up here, and I failed him. I have nowhere to go. I have no one." The confession struck Adewale in the center of her chest. "I have no one." She, Adewale, had millions in the bank properties, shares, and she also felt as if she had no one. But the difference was that Amina had a heart of gold and empty pockets, while Adewale had full pockets and a heart scarred by betrayal. Adewale looked at the crumpled letter. She could pull out her phone, which she had hidden, turned off, at the bottom of her sack, call her private banker, and transfer the full debt in 5 minutes. She could buy the bank if she wanted, but then she remembered the look of contempt from her son Kunle. She remembered her daughter Yemisi saying, "Mama, just die, you're just wasting air." If she saved Amina now with money, it would be easy. But Adewale needed something more. She needed justice, and she needed to close the cycle of pain in her own life before she could save Amina's. She took Amina's hands in hers, her twisted fingers squeezed with surprising strength. "Listen to me closely, Amina," Adewale said, using her full name, with an authority that made the young woman stop crying in surprise. "You are not going to lose this house. I swear it by the memory of my mother and by the nail marks of Christ. You are not going to lose it." "But I have no money," Amina sobbed. "Money comes and goes, my daughter. Sometimes God gives it, and God takes it, and sometimes it's the other way around," Adewale declared, with a mysterious and fierce gaze. "Dry those tears. Don't let Zara see you like this. Fear smells, and vultures approach when they smell fear." Amina looked at her, confused, but strangely comforted by the old woman's certainty. What can I do? Adewale looked toward the horizon where the road disappeared into the distance. Her matriarchal mind, sharpened by years of business and disappointments, sketched a master plan in seconds. You're going to trust me. Tomorrow, we'll make a call. I have some unfinished business to settle. Some distant relatives who might owe me a favor. Adewale lied, knowing it wasn't a favor she was going to collect, but a moral debt. Do you think they'll help? You said they were bad, Amina doubted. They won't do it out of kindness. They'll do it out of greed. And that, my child, is a lever stronger than love for certain people. Adewale stood up with effort, erect, like a dethroned queen preparing her return. Now get up, wash your face. As long as there's life and a roof, there's no defeat. Amina stood up, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. She didn't understand where the destitute old woman got such strength, but she clung to it like a shipwreck survivor to a plank. That night, while Amina prayed with desperate fervor in front of Musa's photo, Adewale went out to the porch. The night wind moved her gray hair. She took out her cell phone from the double bottom of her sack and turned it on. The screen illuminated her wrinkled face with a spectral blue light. She had 20 missed calls from Kunle, 10 from Yemisi. None were out of concern. All were surely to find out about the will or the keys to the safe deposit box. Adewale dialed Kunle's number. Her finger hovered over the call button. Get ready, my children, she whispered to the desert wind. Come see your poor mother die. Come see if you are capable of giving a glass of water to the one who gave you life. This will be your last chance. And if you fail, may God have mercy on you, because I will not. The phone began to ring. 1, 2, 3 rings. Someone answered on the other end with an irritated and arrogant voice. Yes? Who the hell is calling at this hour? Adewale smiled, a sad and terrible smile. It's me, Kunle, your mother. The trap was set. The call had been brief, brutal. Adewale had hung up the phone with trembling hands, not from fear, but from a cold rage that chilled her bones despite the night's heat. Kunle had asked if she had finally decided to stop making a fool of herself, and if she had the insurance papers ready. Not a single, how are you? Not a, are you hungry? Just funerary bureaucracy for a living woman. Adewale stayed on the porch, looking at the black screen of the cell phone as if it were a poisonous scorpion, until she heard Amina's soft footsteps behind her. Mama, who were you talking to? Amina asked, her voice laden with that chronic worry that women who carry the world alone often have. Adewale slowly turned. The light of the full moon illuminated her face, highlighting every wrinkle, every scar of time, but there was something new in her gaze. These were no longer the eyes of the frightened beggar from the road. They were the eyes of a matriarch who had decided to go to war. Sit down, Amina. We need to talk, Adewale said, pointing to the old wicker rocking chair. Her tone brooked no argument. Amina obeyed, feeling a knot in her stomach. Is something bad happening? Do you want to leave? On the contrary, my daughter, I have arrived where I needed to arrive. Adewale took a deep breath, inhaling the smell of dry earth and the night air. Have you looked closely at my eyes, Amina? Have you looked very closely? Amina blinked, confused. She leaned in a little. Yes, you have gray eyes. They are beautiful, though sad. They are the same eyes as his. Adewale pointed with her chin toward the inside of the house, toward where Musa's photo rested on the shelf. The silence that followed was dense, charged with static electricity. Amina looked toward the open door, then at the old woman, and again at the door. Her mind tried to connect points that seemed impossible. Musa? She stammered. Musa was not stillborn, as they told my sister. Adewale's voice broke, letting out an ancient pain of decades. My sister's name was Iyabo Adewale. Our parents threw her out when she became pregnant by a farmhand who was not worthy of our family. They told her the baby had died at birth so she wouldn't look for him. But I always suspected. I always knew that blood could not just disappear like that. Amina put her hands to her mouth, stifling a cry. Tears welled up instantly, hot and fast. Musa always said he felt a part of him was missing, that his mother never loved him. His mother adored him before she even saw him. Adewale interrupted firmly, gently tapping the floor with her staff. And I am his aunt. I am your husband's aunt, Amina. And that child sleeping in there, Zara, is my blood. She is the only pure thing left of my name. Amina slid from the chair and fell to her knees in front of Adewale, hugging her thin legs covered by the dirty skirt. She didn't care about the grime, nor the poverty, nor the mystery. She only cared that Musa, her beloved Musa, had not been alone in the world. Auntie, Amina sobbed, burying her face in the old woman's lap. Oh my God, thank you. We are not alone. Adewale caressed the young woman's black hair with her deformed hands, feeling for the first time in years the warmth of an embrace that asked for nothing in return, an embrace that sought not inheritance, but comfort. Don't cry anymore, my child. We have cried enough, Adewale said, gently lifting Amina's face. Now we have to be strong, because to save this homestead, and to save my soul, we have to do something very difficult. Amina wiped her tears, sniffing, and looked at her new aunt with determination. Whatever it takes. I'll work double shifts. I'll sell the pickup. No, Adewale cut her off, her eyes shining with cunning. It's not about working harder. It's about being smarter. We're going to play a game of chess with them, Amina. Amina instinctively crossed herself. My children, Adewale declared with bitterness. Kunle and Yemisi, they have something that belongs to me, something they stole from me. If I manage to get it back, we will pay the homestead's loan 10 times over, but they won't give it to me if they know I'm alive and well. Adewale leaned forward, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. I need you to call them tomorrow. Me? But they don't know me. Exactly. I need you to be the voice of tragedy. I want you to call them and tell them you found me abandoned on the road, that I am very ill, that I am dying. The word came out heavy but necessary. Tell them I'm delirious, that I have no money, that I smell of rubbish, and that I'm at my last breath. Amina frowned, her natural honesty rebelling against the lie. But auntie, lying is a sin, and you're not dying, thank God. It's a white lie, Amina, or rather, it's a test of poverty, Adewale explained, her gaze hardening. If they come, I want to see why they come. If they come to care for me, I will give them everything. But if they come like vultures to see what's left of my corpse, then they will know divine justice. Amina hesitated. She looked toward the dark field, where the bank's threat felt like an impending storm. Then she thought of Zara, of her future, and she thought of the cruelty of those children who had thrown this old woman onto the road. All right, Amina accepted, feeling the weight of the decision on her shoulders. What exactly do I tell them? Tell them to come to Amina's haven. Tell them it's urgent. Tell them if they don't come tomorrow, the local council will put me in a pauper's grave. Adewale smiled a joyless smile. That will prick their pride. They won't allow the Adewale name to end up in a pauper's grave, not for love, but for what people will say. And the money? Amina innocently asked. If you get back what was stolen from you, will it be enough to pay the 3 months we're behind? It's almost $3,000. Adewale had to bite her tongue not to laugh at the innocence of the figure. $3,000 was what her daughter Yemisi spent on a handbag. It will be enough, my daughter, trust me. It will be enough for Zara to go to university, and for you never again to cry over a bill, Adewale promised. And there will be enough left over to buy half the state if I want, she added to herself. Then I'll do it, Amina said, standing up. First thing tomorrow morning. No, do it when the sun is high, when the heat is unbearable. Let them know that coming here is a sacrifice, Adewale instructed. And one more thing, Amina. Tell me, auntie. From now on, you are not my savior. You are a simple farmer who picked me up. Let them treat you badly. Let them look down on you. Endure it, because the higher they raise their noses, the harder their fall will be. Amina nodded, though she felt a chill in her stomach. She was not an actress. She was a farm woman. But for her family, for Musa, and for this old woman who had brought a miracle wrapped in rags, she would become whatever was necessary. Rest, Auntie Adewale. Tomorrow, the battle begins. Adewale stayed alone on the porch for a moment longer, took out the old cell phone again, and looked at the wallpaper photo. An old image where she hugged 2 small children, Kunle and Yemisi, dressed in their Sunday best. I loved them so much, she whispered to the night, and a solitary tear rolled down her cheek, losing itself in the wrinkles of her chin. I gave them everything, and look what they did with it. She put the phone away and went into the house. The stage was set. The trap was armed with the most irresistible bait for greed. The death of a poor relative who was no longer a hindrance. Tomorrow, Amina's haven would welcome the demons, and Amina would have to open the door for them. Midday at Amina's haven fell like an iron hammer. The heat was so dense that the trembling air over the dry earth seemed liquid. The cicadas sang their deafening symphony, the only sound capable of competing with the accelerated beating of Amina's heart. Sitting at the kitchen table, Amina looked at Adewale's old cell phone as if it were a grenade about to explode. Her hands, accustomed to the roughness of the hoe and the earth, were clammy with cold sweat. Adewale was sitting opposite her, shelling beans with a frightening calm. She had deliberately smudged her face with a little charcoal and disheveled her grey hair to look even more emaciated. "It's time, my daughter," Adewale said, without looking up from the beans. "At this hour Kunle is in his office counting money or yelling at some employee, and Yemisi will be at her club, drinking mimosas and complaining about how hard her life is." Amina swallowed. The knot in her throat was painful. "Auntie, what if they yell at me? What if they say no? If they yell at you, you endure. If they say no, you insist. Tell them that if they don't come to sign the medical release, you'll call the police to report abandonment of an incapacitated person. They fear nothing more than a police scandal," Adewale instructed, with the coldness of a general in battle. "Dial Kunle's number. He is the cruelest, but he is the one in charge." Amina dialed the number with trembling fingers. She put it on speaker as Adewale had requested so they could both listen. "Hello, who is this?" A dry, curt male voice answered. In the background, the frantic typing of a computer could be heard. "Speak quickly. I'm in the middle of a major merger." Amina took a deep breath, seeking strength in her aunt's steel gaze. "Mr. Kunle Adewale?" "The same. Who is speaking?" "If it's the bank offering me credit cards, save your breath." There was a silence on the other end of the line, a heavy silence charged with annoyance. "My mother?" Kunle repeated, and his tone changed from haste to disgust. "I thought that woman was all ready. Anyway, what does she want now? Money? Tell her I don't have cash." Adewale closed her eyes and squeezed a bean pod until it broke. Amina felt a surge of indignation, but she stuck to the script. "She's not asking for money, sir. She's very ill. I found her abandoned on the road, dehydrated and delirious. She doesn't know where she is. I think she's dying." "Dying?" Kunle snorted, as if his mother's death were a logistical inconvenience in his schedule. "Look, madam, my mother is very dramatic. She probably just wants attention. Take her to a public hospital and let them give her an aspirin." "Sir, you don't understand," Amina insisted, raising her voice slightly, injecting urgency. "She can't get out of bed. She trembles a lot and says strange things. I am a poor woman. I don't have money for medicines or doctors. If she dies here in my house, the police will come asking why her children abandoned her like this, and I'll have to give them your number." The mention of the police had the effect Adewale had predicted. "Don't you dare involve the police in this," Kunle barked. "Good heavens, that old woman is always causing me trouble, even to the end. Listen closely, peasant. Don't do anything stupid. Where is that filthy homestead?" "At kilometer 40 on the old road, past the dry bridge." "I'll go, but listen, I'm going to resolve this matter once and for all. If she's as bad as you say, I'll call social services to take her to a state home. I don't intend to carry her burden, and don't think I'm going to pay you for rescuing her. You did it because you wanted to. Just come, sir." "She's asking for you." Amina lied, feeling nauseous. "I'll be there in 3 hours, and tell her to stay put." Kunle hung up without saying goodbye. Amina put the phone down, trembling with rage. "He's a monster, auntie. How can he talk about you like that?" Adewale opened her eyes. There were no tears, only an infinite, crystallized disappointment. "Money corrupts the soul if you have no foundation, Amina. Kunle always wanted more than he deserved. Now call Yemisi." The call to the daughter was different, but equally venomous. "Hello?" A shrill, drawn-out voice answered. "Who is this?" "This is my private number." "Madam Yemisi, I'm Amina. I have your mother, Mama Adewale. She's very ill at my house." "Oh, no," Yemisi cried, but it wasn't a cry of pain, but of complaint. "Why me? Just today I have my spa session, and tonight dinner with the Montemayor's. Mama always ruins everything." "Madam, you need to come. Your brother Kunle is already on his way." The mention of Kunle ignited the sibling rivalry. "Kunle is going there?" Yemisi asked with immediate suspicion. "Why is he going?" "Mama had something. Does she have jewelry?" "No, madam. She only has a sack of cans and dirty clothes. She smells very bad. She needs help." "How disgusting!" Yemisi exclaimed with genuine repulsion. "My God, how embarrassing. If my friends find out my mother is a destitute, I'll die." "All right, I'll go. But I don't intend to touch her if she's dirty. Tell her to, I don't know, spray her with a hose or something." Amina hung up before losing control and screaming a few truths at her. She stood looking at the phone, feeling that she needed to wash her hands and ears with bleach. "They're coming, auntie, both of them," Amina said softly. Adewale nodded slowly and stood up with the help of the table. "Good. Now we have to set the stage, Amina. This house is too clean for their taste. They need to see misery to feel superior. What do you mean? Take that nice quilt off the sofa. Let the broken springs show. Hide the food, let there only be water on the table. And you, dirty your dress a bit. I want them to see us as insects, Amina. I want them to feel so secure in their arrogance that they loosen their tongues and say everything they think. Amina obeyed, though it pained her soul to uglify her home. She removed the paper flowers, hid the embroidered tablecloth. The house, stripped of its loving touches, looked sad and poor, just as it would appear to the soulless eyes of Adewale's children. One more thing, Adewale said, sitting in the rocking chair on the porch, her gaze fixed on the dirt road that snaked toward the highway. When they arrive, don't defend me. Let them humiliate me. I don't know if I can bear that, Auntie. You have to, because every insult they throw at me today will be another nail in their coffin. It's necessary for them to completely remove their masks. Amina stood beside her, arms crossed, feeling the sun's heat and the coldness of fear. In the distance, on the horizon, a cloud of dust began to rise. It was them. The vultures had smelled blood and were coming to finish the job, but they didn't know that the prey they thought was dying had sharp claws and was ready to hunt. May God forgive us for the trap, Auntie, Amina whispered. God loves justice, my daughter, Adewale replied, gripping her staff. And today, in this homestead, justice will be served. The usual silence of Amina's haven, woven with the cicada's song and the dry wind's whisper through the bushes, was brutally torn apart. It wasn't thunder, nor the roar of a wild animal, but the powerful mechanical sound of engines that didn't belong in this world of earth and sweat. In the distance, two bright specks appeared on the dirt track, growing rapidly into metal monsters. A sleek black sedan, polished to a dark mirror finish, led the way, closely followed by a silver SUV, so tall and robust it looked like a tank designed for the shopping mall. Amina watched from the kitchen window, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. She gripped the edge of the sink until her knuckles turned white. They're here, Auntie, she announced, her voice trembling not with fear, but with a nauseating anticipation. Adewale, sitting in the old rocking chair in the living room, adjusted the ragged blanket over her legs. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathed deeply. Inhaling the smell of the humble home her children were about to profane, and when she opened them, the strong matriarch of the previous night was gone. In her place was a frail, trembling, defeated old woman. The disguise was complete. Let them in, Amina, Adewale instructed. And remember, you are invisible to them. You are merely the servant of fate. The vehicles braked abruptly in front of the porch, raising a cloud of ochre dust that enveloped the immaculate bodywork like an insult from the earth. The black sedan's door opened. First, a shining, perfect Italian leather shoe emerged, landing with disgust on the loose earth. Then, Kunle stepped out. He was a tall man with slicked-back hair, not a single strand out of place, and a tailored gray suit that cost more than the homestead produced in 5 years. He took off his sunglasses and looked around with a grimace of absolute disgust, as if the mere act of breathing the country air was polluting his lungs. He brushed an invisible speck of dust from his lapel and looked at his shoes, which were already beginning to cover with a thin layer of dirt. Filth, he muttered, kicking a small stone. From the other vehicle, Yemisi descended. She wore a white linen dress, ridiculously inappropriate for a rural visit, and stilettos that immediately sank into the soft earth, making her stumble. "Oh, my shoes!" she shrieked, clutching the door of her SUV. "Kunle! This place is a pigsty! How could Mama have chosen to die in this dump?" Amina stepped onto the porch, smoothing her dirty apron, swallowing her pride. "Good afternoon. You must be Mama Adewale's children." Kunle ascended the porch, steps 2 at a time, ignoring the hand Amina extended out of courtesy. He walked past her as if she were a fence post, not even deigning to look her in the eyes. "Where is she?" he barked, entering the house without asking permission. Yemisi followed, pulling a perfumed silk handkerchief from her bag and covering her nose and mouth. She looked Amina up and down, pausing at her worn sandals and rough hands. "You're the one who called, I suppose," Yemisi said in a nasal voice muffled by the handkerchief. "I hope you served water or something. I don't want to catch lice or anything strange." Amina felt her blood boil, but she lowered her head. "Come in. She's in the living room." The invasion was complete. Yemisi's expensive, cloying perfume and Kunle's aggressive cologne filled the small living room, battling against the smell of firewood and beans. Kunle stopped dead upon seeing his mother. Adewale was hunched in the rocking chair, wrapped in rags, her head bowed, her trembling hands clutching the armrests. She looked like a small bundle of misery. "Mother," Kunle said. There was no warmth or concern. His tone was that of a boss scolding an incompetent employee. "Look at you. You're pathetic." Adewale slowly lifted her gaze. Her watery grey eyes rested on her firstborn. "Kunle, you came," she croaked. "Of course I came. Someone has to clean up your mess," he retorted, crossing his arms without approaching. "You disappear for months. You make us look ridiculous with club members, thinking you'd gone on a trip to Europe, and you turn out to be here playing at being a destitute." Yemisi peered from behind her brother's shoulder, maintaining a safe distance of 2 meters. "Oh, Mama, you smell like a barn," she exclaimed, with a grimace of genuine repulsion. "How could you fall so low? What did you do with the clothes I left in the rubbish bag when you left?" "They were stolen," Adewale lied, coughing weakly. "I slept under a bridge, my daughter. I was cold." "Well, you should have gone to the municipal shelter," Kunle interrupted impatiently. "We told you couldn't stay in the big house. That house is a company asset now, and you no longer fit the corporate image, Mother. You're senile, look at you." Amina, standing in the kitchen doorway, clenched her teeth so hard her jaw ached. She wanted to yell at them, to drive them out with a broom, but Adewale's sidelong glance kept her rooted to her spot. "I'm thirsty," Adewale pleaded, stretching a trembling hand toward Yemisi. Yemisi instinctively recoiled a step, as if her mother's hand were a contagious claw. "Hey!" Yemisi yelled, turning to Amina and snapping her fingers. "Didn't you hear? Bring her water. And make it bottled, not tap. We don't want her getting cholera or anything like that." Amina took a deep breath, counted to 3, and went to the kitchen. She returned with a mismatched glass filled with water from the jug. She gave it to Adewale with tenderness, helping her to drink. "Thank you, my daughter," Adewale whispered, emphasizing the word daughter. Kunle looked at the scene impatiently, checking his solid gold watch. "All right, enough with the dramatics. We don't have all day. I have a business dinner at 8, and this is in the middle of nowhere." He pulled a leather folder from his briefcase and extracted some documents full of stamps and small print. "Yemisi and I have spoken," Kunle announced, approaching the rocking chair but careful not to brush against the dirty blanket. "As it's evident you can no longer care for yourself and have lost your mind, look where you are. For God's sake, we've processed your immediate admission to the state old people's home, Our Lady of Forgetfulness." Amina stifled a gasp. She knew that place. It was a warehouse for the elderly, a place where people went to await death amid soiled sheets and constant sedation. It was free and notorious for its neglect. "The state one?" Adewale asked with a thread of a voice. But you have money, Kunle. You change cars every year." "Yemisi, your handbags. That has nothing to do with it," Yemisi interrupted, offended. "Our money is ours, Mama. You've already lived your life. Besides, the state home is adequate for your condition. We're not going to spend Grandpa's inheritance on a luxury private home just for you to forget who we are in a week. Sign here," Kunle ordered, placing the paper on his mother's lap and offering her a Montblanc pen. "It's a relinquishment of rights and a letter of consent for voluntary admission. It also gives us full power over any remnants left in your accounts. Though, I doubt there's anything left." Adewale looked at the paper. The letters danced before her eyes. It was her civil death sentence. Her children hadn't come to see if she was well. They had come to ensure she ceased to be a legal problem. "And if I don't sign?" Adewale asked, fixing her gaze on Kunle. Kunle leaned in, and for a second, his attractive face transformed into a mask of pure cruelty. "If you don't sign, we leave you here. In this pigsty, without money, without medicine, in the care of this farm girl." He pointed at Amina with disdain. "And when you die of an infection or hunger, we won't even go to the funeral. You'll go to a pauper's grave, Mother. You decide. A state home with a roof and food, or rot here in the dirt." The room fell silent. A heavy silence broken only by the buzzing of a fly that circled Yemisi's perfect hairstyle. At that moment, Zara, who had been hiding behind her room door, came out, clutching her rabbit. Curiosity had overcome fear. "Why are they mean to Grandma?" the child asked in her clear, innocent voice. Kunle turned sharply, as if stung by an insect. He looked at the child, and then at Amina, with a grimace of utter disgust. "Say you, Yemisi? There are dirty children running everywhere. This is unsanitary. Mama will catch something." "Get out, child," Yemisi hissed. "This is an adult conversation." Amina stepped forward, interposing herself between the vultures and her daughter. Her patience had broken. "Don't speak to my daughter like that," Amina said, her voice, though low, having the sharpness of a machete. This is my home, and even if it's poor and dirty to you, here, respect is given. Kunle let out a dry laugh. Your home, please. If this barely qualifies as a shack, you should be thanking us for taking the old woman. We're removing a burden from you. He turned back to Adewale, ignoring Amina again. Sign, mother. I'm already roasting in this heat. Adewale took the pen. Her hand trembled, but not from weakness, but from the adrenaline of the final decision. All right, Adewale said. I will sign. But first, I want one thing. What? Kunle scoffed. A last whim? I want you to tell me, looking me in the eyes, if you ever loved me, if I was ever your mother and not just your bank. Kunle and Yemisi exchanged a look of annoyance. Oh mama, please, how melodramatic. Yemisi sighed, looking at her nails. Of course we loved you. When you bought us things, when you were useful. But people get old, mama. It's the cycle of life. You've already given what you had to give. Now, well, now you're in the way. It's the truth. It's pure biology, mother, Kunle added coldly. Children displace parents. Don't take it personally. Sign, and let's go. Adewale looked down at the paper. The truth had been spoken. There was no love, no gratitude, only biology and avarice. No, Adewale whispered. What did you say? Kunle asked, approaching dangerously. Adewale raised her head, and in that instant, she stopped trembling. She dropped the luxury pen, which fell to the cement floor with a sharp clink. I said I'm not signing anything today. Her voice sounded a little stronger, a little less broken. I'm tired. I want to sleep. If you want my signature, you'll have to come back tomorrow and bring a real lawyer, not these papers you printed in your office. Kunle turned red with rage. Are you making me waste my time? Sign now, or I swear that. You're going to hit me here in front of witnesses? Adewale interrupted, holding his gaze. Kunle clenched his fists but looked at Amina, who was standing by the door with her arms crossed, observing everything. He knew he couldn't use physical force. Fine, Kunle spat, picking his pen off the floor and cleaning it with a handkerchief. We'll be back first thing tomorrow morning with a notary, and you'll sign, mother. Or I swear, I'll have this homestead bulldozed with you inside if necessary. Let's go, Yemisi. This place makes me sick. The children turned and left the house as if fleeing a fire. The engines of the luxury cars roared with fury, raising more dust as they sped down the dirt road. When the sound faded, silence returned to the homestead. But it was a different silence. It was no longer one of fear, it was the silence before the storm. Adewale sank back into the rocking chair, exhausted by the performance and the pain of rejection. It's done, Amina. They've removed their masks. Amina rushed to her side and knelt, taking her cold hands. It's okay, Auntie. They were horrible. Adewale looked toward the empty door, and a solitary tear, the last she would shed for them, rolled down her cheek. They are poor, Amina. They are the poorest people I have ever met in my life. Then her expression hardened. The pain turned to steel. Tomorrow, they will come with a notary. Perfect, because I also have someone to invite. She looked at Amina with blazing eyes. Amina, I need you to go to the village. Look for Barrister Emeka Okafor. He's old, a bit deaf, but he's the most honest man in the region. Tell him Adewale has returned from the dead and needs to draft a new will. Amina drove to the village with her heart in her throat, squeezing every drop of power from the old Ford's engine. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky a violent, almost apocalyptic orange that reflected in the rearview mirror. The village of Gadadaya was a place where time seemed to have stopped for lack of funds. The streets were dusty, and businesses closed early. Amina braked in front of a worn colonial building with a creaking wooden sign. Barrister Emeka Okafor. Lawyer and notary. Barrister Okafor was an institution in the region, an 80-year-old man with skin like ancient parchment and a moral code as rigid as his spine. He was about to close his office, turning off the lights in his room filled with law books that smelled of dampness and wisdom when Amina burst in, panting and sweating. Barrister Okafor, wait. The old man adjusted his bifocals and looked at her with curiosity. Amina, what are you doing here at this hour, my child? Is it about the bank? I already told you I can try to ask for an extension, but it's not the bank, Barrister. It's a matter of life or death. I need you to come to the homestead right now. Now, my daughter? My bones are no longer for night journeys on that road. Please. It's about Mama Adewale. The name had the effect of lightning. Barrister Okafor stood motionless, his door key half turned. Adewale? he whispered as if invoking a ghost. Everyone says she disappeared. Her children say she went to Europe and lost her mind. She's at my house, and if you don't come to help her tomorrow, she'll lose everything she has left. 15 minutes later, the lawyer's old sedan followed Amina's pickup, raising a trail of dust toward Amina's haven. By the time they arrived, the night had completely fallen. The homestead was plunged into the deep darkness of the countryside, broken only by the yellow light from the kitchen window. Barrister Okafor entered with slow steps, leaning on his mahogany cane. Upon seeing the woman sitting at the kitchen table, dressed in humble but clean clothes, Amina had lent her one of her own dresses while washing the rags for tomorrow's performance. The lawyer removed his hat with respect and awe. "Mama Adewale," he said, and his voice trembled. "My old eyes did not believe what my ears heard. You have changed." Adewale smiled, a tired but sharp smile. "Life takes many turns, Emeka, and sometimes it drags us through the mud. So we learn to value firm ground. Your children. Kunle called me weeks ago. He wanted to declare your legal absence to take control of the oil trust," the lawyer informed, sitting opposite her. "I refused without a body or proof. You did well, old friend. You did well." Amina served coffee, observing the scene in silence. She didn't fully understand. Trust, oil. She knew her aunt had money, but those words sounded like another world. "They told me they're coming tomorrow with a notary from the city to make me sign a total relinquishment and put me in the state home," Adewale said, taking a sip of coffee. Barrister Okafor slammed his fist on the table. "That's illegal! It's coercion!" "If you are in full possession of your faculties, I am, Emeka, more lucid than ever. But they believe I'm a senile, poor old woman. And that's exactly what I want them to believe until the very last second." Adewale looked at Amina. "My daughter, bring the sack." Amina went to the corner where the sack of cans rested. She dragged it to the center of the kitchen. The clinking of aluminum filled the silence. "Cans?" the lawyer asked, confused. "This is what Mama Adewale wants to protect? Not what's on top, what's underneath." Adewale stood up, took a kitchen knife, and with surprising force, slashed the bottom of the sack. The cans rolled onto the cement floor, noisy and bright. Amina and Barrister Okafor watched, mesmerized. Beneath the rubbish, there was a rectangular package wrapped in layers of black plastic and adhesive tape. Adewale took it and placed it on the table, moving the coffee cups aside. She tore open the plastic. A blue leather folder appeared with the gold emblem of an international bank and the seal of the federal government. "This is the property deed and the articles of incorporation for the Adewale Oil Trust," Adewale announced, placing her hand on the folder. "My children sold the house, the cars, the shares of the construction company, but they forgot this. Or rather, they never knew how to read the fine print of my husband's inheritance." She opened the folder. Barrister Okafor adjusted his glasses and leaned in. His eyes widened as he read the figures. "Good heavens," the lawyer murmured, paling. "Mama Adewale, these are the exploitation rights to the oil wells in the Niger Delta Basin. The accumulated royalties from the last 5 years are intact," Adewale completed, "locked in an account that only opens with my signature and my in-person fingerprint." Amina approached, looking at the papers without understanding the numbers, but understanding the lawyer's reaction. It's a lot of money, Auntie." Barrister Okafor looked at the young widow and let out a nervous laugh. "My daughter, with this, you could buy the entire village, pave it with marble, and still have enough left over to buy the bank that wants to take your house." The silence that followed was absolute. Amina felt her legs give way and had to sit down. It wasn't joy she felt, but vertigo. She had been protecting a woman who carried an empire in a bag of rubbish. "But it's not the money that matters now," Adewale said, closing the folder with a sharp thud. "It's the destiny of that money." She looked at Barrister Okafor with intensity. "Emeka, get your portable typewriter. I know you have it in the car. We are going to draft a new will right now." "What are your instructions?" the lawyer asked, regaining his professional posture, ready for the legal battle. Adewale looked at Amina, who was still in shock, her eyes full of tears, not from the money, but from the magnitude of the secret. Then she looked toward the room where Zara slept. "I completely disinherit Kunle Adewale and Yemisi Adewale for reasons of unworthiness, ingratitude, and abandonment." Adewale dictated in a firm voice, each word falling like a sentence. "And I name as universal heir to all my present and future assets, my nephew's wife, Amina Musa, and my grandniece, Zara Musa." Amina jumped out of her chair. "No, Auntie, I can't accept that. It's too much. They are your children." They lost that right when they threw me onto the street, Amina, Adewale said, taking her hand. You gave me water when I was thirsty, you gave me shelter when I was cold, and you gave me love when I felt like a monster. Blood makes you relatives, but loyalty makes you family. But it's too much. I just want to pay the loan, Amina sobbed. You will pay the loan, and then you will help others. I know you will, because your heart is good. Money in the hands of my children is poison. In your hands, it will be fertilizer for this land. Barrister Okafor, his eyes shining with contained emotion, nodded. He went out to get his machine. The night passed with the clatter of keys. Tack, tack, tack. Ding. It was the sound of justice being forged, letter by letter. They drafted the document with surgical care. Barrister Okafor used every legal term, every protective clause, shielding the will against any future challenge. When they finished, it was 3 a.m. Adewale signed with a steady hand. Amina and Barrister Okafor signed as witnesses. It is done, the lawyer said, sealing the document with red wax, an ancient touch that gave solemnity to the act. Now, Mama Adewale, you are legally the owner of your destiny again. Thank you, old friend. What do I do now? Amina asked, exhausted, but with a nervous energy coursing through her body. Now, sleep a couple of hours, Adewale said, hiding the blue folder again, but this time not in the rubbish, but under Amina's mattress. And tomorrow prepare for the theater. What's going to happen tomorrow? Amina asked with fear. Adewale approached the window and looked out into the darkness where coyotes howled at the moon. Tomorrow, my children will come, believing they are going to pluck a dead chicken, and they will encounter a royal eagle. Adewale turned, and her grey eyes shone with a dangerous light. And you, Amina, will be by my side, not as the servant, but as the owner of all this. But shh, let it be a surprise. Dawn came quickly, bringing with it a blood-red sky. At 9 o'clock, the dust on the horizon announced the return of the vultures. This time they brought reinforcements, a corrupt notary from the city, and the arrogant certainty of victory. Amina smoothed her apron, quickly prayed a Hail Mary, and opened the door. The final judgment was about to begin. At 9 o'clock in the morning, the dust rose again on the driveway to Amina's haven, announcing the arrival of the executioners. The sun, already high and aggressive, seemed like an interrogation spotlight pointed directly at the porch of the humble house. Amina stood by the door with her arms crossed over her chest, feeling her heart pound against her ribs. She had hidden Zara in the barn under the pretense of feeding the chickens. She didn't want her daughter to witness the cruelty that was about to unfold. The luxury vehicles stopped with the same abruptness as the day before. Kunle descended first, followed by Yemisi, and this time by a third man. He was a short, bald, sweating fellow in a cheap, ill-fitting suit, carrying a synthetic leather briefcase under his arm. That's the notary they brought, Amina whispered towards the living room, where Adewale was already in position. Barrister Adewale identified with a murmur, recognizing the man, a third-rate legal hack who would forge his own mother's signature for a few naira. Perfect. Kunle climbed onto the porch without greeting, gently pushing Amina aside. Get out of the way. Today I don't have time for your servant dramas. They entered the living room. The air instantly became dense, charged with the tension of 3 predators cornering prey they believed to be helpless. Adewale looked up from her rocking chair. She wore the same dirty dress Amina had resoiled with dirt that morning, and her hands were clasped in her lap, feigning uncontrollable trembling. Good morning, mother, Kunle said with a false smile that didn't reach his cold eyes. I present to you Barrister Oladele. He's going to help us expedite everything. The notary wiped the sweat from his forehead with a dirty handkerchief and nodded nervously. A pleasure, Madame Adewale. Your children have explained your delicate situation. We are here to help you. Yemisi remained near the door, fanning herself with an old magazine she had found, looking at the peeling walls with disgust. Let's get this over with. The damp smell is making me nauseous. Kunle snapped his fingers, and the notary opened his briefcase on the small coffee table, pulling out a stack of documents. It's very simple, Mama Adewale, Oladele explained, using a condescending tone as if speaking to a small child. Here we have a universal relinquishment of rights. Basically, you cede control of any remaining assets, forgotten bank accounts and properties to your children. For what? Adewale asked weakly. To manage them for your benefit, of course. Kunle quickly interjected. To pay for, your medical expenses at the home. And here, the notary continued, pulling out another paper, is the informed consent for your immediate admission to the State Old People's Home, Our Lady of Forgetfulness. Amina, from the corner of the room, felt a retch. She knew that home was a place where people went to die alone amidst soiled sheets and neglect. Adewale looked at the papers. The black letters seemed like cell bars. She knew exactly what they were, a civil death sentence. If she signed that, her children would have the legal power to lock her up and forget about her forever. But Adewale was not going to sign yet. She needed one last confirmation. She needed to know, without a shadow of a doubt, that not a drop of humanity remained in those hearts she herself had nursed. "Ah, children," Adewale said, her voice trembling with a vulnerability that made Amina have to bite her lip to keep from intervening. "Before I sign, I need to ask you something." Kunle rolled his eyes and looked at the ceiling. "What is it now, mother? Do you want water again?" "No, I want to know if you'll visit me." The question hung in the air, heavy and painful. "I'm afraid of being alone in that place," Adewale continued, letting a real tear roll down her dirty cheek. "I'm old. My bones ache. I don't want to die surrounded by strangers. Promise me you'll come to see me on Sundays, that you'll bring me flowers." Yemisi let out a nervous, cruel giggle. "Oh, Mama, please don't be ridiculous. Sundays are my spa days. Besides, those places are depressing. We'll visit you when we can, at Christmas, maybe." "And you, Kunle?" Adewale turned her face toward her eldest son. "You'll go. You were my beautiful boy. I always gave you everything you asked for." Kunle adjusted his tie knot, uncomfortable, but his answer was an icy dagger. "Mother, I am a busy man. I don't have time to sit and watch you drool in a wheelchair." "We are paying for your roof and food," he lied, "for the home was free. That's more than you deserve after having run away and embarrassed us like this. Consider yourself well served." Adewale's heart hardened a little more, turning into volcanic rock. "I see," she whispered. "So it's just a formality. You discard me like old furniture." "It's for the best for everyone," Kunle declared, losing patience. "Sign now." "Oladele." "Give her the pen." The notary handed her a cheap plastic ballpoint pen. Adewale took it, but her hand remained suspended in the air. I have a debt," she said suddenly. Kunle tensed. "What debt? To whom do you owe money?" "To her." Adewale pointed at Amina with the pen. "This young woman took me in. She fed me from her own plate when I was starving. She needs. I owe her for medicines. My back hurts a lot. I need pain pills." She looked at her children with a plea. Do you have 1,000 naira? Just 1,000 naira? To give Amina so she can buy me something for the pain before I go to the home? Please, it's the only thing I ask of you." It was the ultimate test of poverty. 1,000 naira, $1, at that time, would have been a similar gesture to 20 pesos, an insignificant amount for them, who wore $1,000 shoes. Yemisi scoffed with indignation. "Unbelievable. Now we have to support your servant too. That woman did it because she wanted to, Mama. It's her problem." Kunle reached into his trouser pocket. He pulled out a handful of loose coins and a crumpled 2,000 naira note. He looked at it with disdain, and then, with a movement Amina would never forget, he tossed it to the floor. The coins rolled across the cement, clinking with a metallic, sad sound. The note fell near Adewale's bare feet. "There you go," Kunle said with contempt. "For your aspirins, and consider yourself well paid. I'm not giving you another kobo. Now sign." Amina stepped forward, trembling with fury. Her hands were clenched into fists so tight her nails dug into her palms. "Pick up that money," Amina cried, forgetting the plan for a second. "Have a little respect for your mother." Kunle turned to her, invading her personal space with menacing aggression. "You shut up, you impudent peasant," he yelled in her face. "This is a family matter. If you open your mouth again, I'll have you evicted from this dump today." "Amina, stop," Adewale ordered in a dry voice. Amina stopped, breathing heavily, tears of rage in her eyes. She looked at Adewale, waiting for the signal. "Enough, Auntie. Tell them. Kill them with the truth now," she thought. But Adewale said nothing. She bent down with difficulty and, with a dignity that contrasted with the humiliation of the act, picked up the 2,000 naira note from the floor, smoothing it on her knee. 2,000 naira, Adewale murmured, looking at the note as if it were a relic. "This is what I'm worth to you, my son? 2,000 naira and some coins? It's what you have, mother, and you have nothing," Kunle replied with absolute cruelty. "Sign, we're running late." Adewale nodded slowly. "You're right, Kunle. One is worth what one has." She placed the paper on the table. Barrister Oladele smiled, savoring his easy fees. Yemisi sighed with relief, already thinking about her 11 o'clock massage. Kunle looked at his watch, victorious. Adewale brought the tip of the pen to the paper. "Wait," Adewale said, stopping just before touching the sheet. "There's an error in this document." "What error?" Oladele asked, annoyed. "I drafted it myself. Here it says, I, Adewale, in a state of indigence." Adewale read. "That's not correct." Kunle slammed his fist on the table. "For God's sake, you are a destitute. Look at you. You live off the charity of a peasant. Sign it now." Adewale looked up, and then it happened. The fragility vanished. The trembling of her hands ceased. Her back, previously hunched, slowly straightened until it touched the back of the rocking chair, and her eyes, her gray eyes, previously watery and pleading, dried and shone with the cold fire of an imminent execution. She smiled, but it wasn't a mother's smile. It was the smile of a judge delivering a sentence. "I am not destitute, Kunle," Adewale said, and her voice sounded clear, strong, resonant, with no trace of the weakness she had feigned. "And this makeshift notary is useless for what we are going to do today." Kunle and Yemisi recoiled a step, confused by the sudden change in atmosphere. "What are you talking about, crazy old woman?" Adewale looked toward the kitchen door. "Come in, Emeka. It's time for the reading." From the shadows of the kitchen, where he had been listening to every insult, every taunt, and the sound of the coins falling to the floor, Barrister Emeka Okafor emerged. He walked slowly, in his old but impeccable suit, carrying a blue folder under his arm that Kunle recognized instantly. The color drained from Kunle's face as if a vein had been opened. "Barrister Okafor?" Yemisi stammered, recognizing their father's old lawyer. "What is he doing here?" Adewale stood up without help, without a staff, dropped the cheap pen on the table, and looked at her children from a moral height they would never reach. "He is here to read my true will," Adewale said, "and to explain to you how much that 2,000 naira note you threw on the floor is really worth." Kunle looked at the blue folder, then at his mother, then at Amina, who was now smiling with fierce satisfaction. "Mama?" Kunle asked, his voice small, terrified. "What is happening?" Adewale took a step forward, and the sound of her sandals against the floor was like a hammer blow. "What is happening, my son, is that you failed the test, and now you will pay the tuition." The presence of Barrister Emeka Okafor filled the small living room with a gravity that suffocated the visitor's arrogance. Barrister Oladele, recognizing the old lawyer, a living legend in the state's courts for his unbreakable integrity, began to sweat profusely and closed his briefcase with a quick, guilty motion, like a rat smelling a cat. "Barrister Okafor," Kunle repeated, and his voice broke into a high, almost childish note. His eyes were fixed on the blue folder Emeka held against his chest. That folder is from the International Bank." "That's right, Kunle," Emeka replied in a deep voice, advancing to the table. He ignored the chair Oladele had occupied and stood tall and straight like an ancient baobab tree. "And it contains the documents that you and your sister conveniently ignored when you sold the family home." Adewale was still standing. She no longer trembled. She removed the dirty headscarf, letting her gray hair fall over her shoulders, and smoothed her stained dress with a dignity that transformed the rags into a royal cloak. "Sit down," Adewale commanded. It was not an invitation. It was an order. Kunle and Yemisi fell onto the rickety sofa as if their tendons had been cut. "What's going on, Mama?" Yemisi shrieked, her perfect makeup beginning to crack with panic. "What is all this? You said you were poor." "We saw the cans." "You saw what you wanted to see," Adewale replied coldly. "You saw dirt because your souls are dirty. You saw poverty because you only value money." She gestured to Emeka. "Read, Barrister, let them know what they despised for 2,000 naira." Barrister Okafor opened the blue folder. The sound of the paper rustling echoed like a gunshot in the suffocating silence. He adjusted his glasses and began to read with perfect diction. Consolidated Statement of Account for the Adewale Oil Trust. Soleholder Mama Adewale, widow of Montemayor. Liquid assets accumulated as royalties from exploitation in the Niger Delta Basin during the current fiscal period. The lawyer paused dramatically and looked at the siblings over his spectacles. "The figure amounts to $12 million, plus accrued interest." The world stopped. Amina had to grab the back of a chair to keep from falling. She knew it was a lot of money, but that amount was abstract and unimaginable. Kunle turned white as paper. His mouth opened and closed several times like a fish out of water. 12 million, he stammered. He put a hand to his chest, feeling a real tachycardia. But the wells were old. They said they were dry. They were reactivated 5 years ago with new fracking technology. Emeka explained with satisfaction. Your mother received the notices, but as you had her isolated in the annex of the house, you never found out. She blocked the accounts to protect herself from this. Yemisi let out a strangled cry and looked at her mother with an expression that quickly changed from horror to desperate, grotesque greed. "Mama," Yemisi exclaimed, getting up and running towards her with open arms. "My beautiful mama, I knew you were a genius. Oh, thank God you're well. What a scare you gave us with that poverty joke." She tried to hug Adewale, but the old woman raised her staff and placed it against her daughter's chest, stopping her dead. "Don't touch me," Adewale said. Her voice was soft, but sharp as ice. 5 minutes ago, I smelled like a barn. 5 minutes ago, my hands disgusted you. I don't smell bad anymore, Yemisi. Or is it that money has a perfume that covers rottenness? Yemisi recoiled, humiliated, her face burning. "Mama, please, we were stressed. We didn't know what we were saying. You know how Kunle is. He pressured me." "Shut up, Viper," Kunle yelled, jumping off the sofa. "Don't blame me." He turned to Adewale, trying to regain his businessman's posture, though sweat was running down his temples. "Mother, listen. This changes things. Obviously, the state home is not the place for you. We'll cancel that. I'll take you to my house. I'll give you the master suite. We'll hire private nurses. Anything you want." "Your house?" Adewale asked with irony. "That house where you forbade me to enter the main living room because my old shoes scratched the floor? That was a misunderstanding." He tried to excuse himself. "No," Adewale cut him off. "It was not a misunderstanding. It was cruelty. And today, here, you threw coins on the floor. You told me I was worth what I had." Adewale bent down with difficulty and picked up the 2,000 naira note Kunle had thrown earlier. She held it in the air, showing it as proof of the crime. "This note, Kunle, is the price of your inheritance." Kunle froze. "What? What do you mean?" "Barrister, read the final clause," Adewale ordered. Emeka turned the pages until he reached the fresh document drafted the previous night. "Therefore, and in full use of my mental faculties, certified by a forensic doctor on this very date," Emeka showed an annexed medical certificate, blocking any attempt by Kunle to claim dementia. "I revoke any previous will and declare my children, Kunle Adewale and Yemisi Adewale, completely disinherited for reasons of grave ingratitude, abandonment, and proven psychological abuse." "You can't do that!" Kunle roared, the veins in his neck bulging. "I'm your son! It's my right! I'll contest this! I'll drag you through every court!" "Try it," Emeka challenged. "I have security recordings from this morning. I have Amina's testimony, I have this note on the floor, and I have Barrister Oladile here present." Emeka looked at the corrupt notary, who I'm sure will testify in our favor so as not to lose his license for attempted fraud, won't you, colleague? Oladile nodded frantically, gathering his things. Yes, of course, all legal. I better go. This is a family matter." The notary ran out, leaving the siblings alone in their shipwreck. "Then who?" Yemisi asked, crying, but not from repentance, but from rage. "Who gets everything? The government? The church?" Adewale walked up to Amina, who was still standing in the corner, a silent witness to the Greek tragedy. The old woman took the young widow's calloused, hard-working hand and raised it high. "She," Adewale announced, "Amina Musa, and my granddaughter, Zara Musa." Kunle looked at Amina with a pure, undiluted, visceral hatred. "She," he spat. "That peasant? You're going to leave my money to a servant you picked off the street? She must have brainwashed you. She's an opportunist. She picked me up, Kunle," Adewale corrected with a voice like thunder. "When you threw me out like rubbish, she picked me up. She shared her food when she had none. You, who have abundance, denied me a glass of water." Adewale squeezed Amina's hand. "Amina is not a servant. She is the widow of your cousin Musa. She is family, and she has more nobility in the nail of her little finger than you in your entire body." Yemisi sank to the floor, sobbing hysterically. "It's not fair. I have debts, Mama. I owe on my cards. They're going to take my car." "Then work," Adewale told her, looking at her without pity. "You have 2 healthy hands. Learn to use them, like Amina does. It's the best lesson I can give you before I die." Kunle, seeing that all was lost, tried one last card, physical threat. He took a step toward his mother, his fists clenched. "I won't allow this, crazy old woman. Give me those papers." But before he could approach, Amina stepped in front. She was no longer the frightened woman of the day before. Now she was a lioness defending her pride. She grabbed a broom leaning against the wall and held it like a spear. "Back!" Amina cried, and her black eyes shone with a fury that made Kunle recoil. "Don't you dare touch her. This is my house, and you are not welcome. Get out," Adewale declared, pointing to the open door where the midday sun shone relentlessly. "Out of my sight, and take your coins. You'll need them." Kunle looked at his mother, then at Amina, and finally at Barrister Okafor, who was already dialing a number on his cell phone, probably the local sheriff's. "You'll regret this, mother," Kunle hissed, venom in his voice. "You'll die alone in this hole. Better alone than in bad company," Adewale replied. "And I'm not alone. I have my real family here." Kunle turned around, kicked a chair in his path, and stormed out. Yemisi got up, her mascara streaked, making her look like a sad clown, and ran after him, shouting accusations at her brother. The engines of the luxury cars roared one last time, raising a cloud of dust that this time, for Adewale and Amina, meant not invasion, but cleansing. They were taking away the bad energy. They were taking away the greed. When the sound faded on the road, a deep and healing silence descended upon Amina's haven. Adewale turned to Amina. The adrenaline left her body, and the old woman stumbled. Amina dropped the broom and held her in a strong, warm embrace. "It's over, Auntie. They're gone," Amina whispered. "Yes, my daughter. They're gone." Adewale leaned on the young woman's shoulder and wept. Not for the money or for the victory, but for the grief of having lost her children in life. Now we can begin to live. Barrister Okafor discreetly wiped a tear from behind his glasses. "Well, ladies, I think we have a loan to pay, and I think there's a bank that's going to get a big surprise this afternoon." Amina looked at her aunt, then at Musa's photo on the altar. "We did it, my love," she said to the heir. "We saved the land." But the story didn't end there. With the money secured and the vultures expelled, a pending mission remained. A mission Adewale had held in her heart for 50 years, and which now, with resources in hand, she could fulfill. "Amina," Adewale said, pulling away from the embrace and wiping her tears with determination. "Prepare the pickup." "Now? Where are we going, Auntie?" "We're going to find my sister," Adewale said. "We're going to find Musa's mother, because money is useless if it doesn't heal the wounds of the past." When the last cloud of dust raised by Kunle's and Yemisi's cars dissipated on the horizon, Amina's haven was plunged into a peace that seemed supernatural. It was as if the earth itself had held its breath during the invasion and now finally exhaled with relief. Amina leaned against the doorframe, feeling her legs turn to jelly. The adrenaline of the confrontation evaporated, giving way to a deep but sweet weariness. "They're gone, Mama," a small voice said from the barn. Zara peeked her curly head out, clutching Boli, her eyes wide. She had heard the shouting, but seeing her mother's calm face, she knew the danger had passed. Amina ran to her and picked her up, burying her face in the child's neck, inhaling her scent of innocence and sun. "Yes, my love, the bad people are gone, and they'll never come back." Adewale, standing on the porch next to Barrister Emeka Okafor, observed the scene with a melancholic smile. She had lost 2 children that day, yes, but she had gained a family worth more than all the oil barrels in Nigeria. "Well, Mama Adewale," the lawyer said, putting his glasses back in his jacket pocket. "The hard part is over. Now comes the fun part." "The fun part?" Amina asked, approaching with Zara in her arms. "Paying," Adewale declared with a mischievous glint in her eyes. "Amina, get ready. Put on your Sunday dress. We're going to the bank now." "But Auntie, I'm disheveled." "You'll go with your head held high, my daughter. Today you are not going to beg for clemency. Today you are going to teach a lesson." The regional bank of Gadadaya was a red brick building with air conditioning that was always too cold, designed to intimidate farmers who entered with their hats in their hands to ask for loans. The manager, Mr. Obina, a bulldog-faced man with executioner's manners, was reviewing some papers when he saw Amina enter. He frowned. He knew her file. 3 months overdue. Imminent foreclosure. "Madam Musa, Mr. Obina said, without getting up from his chair or offering her a seat. "If you've come to ask for another extension, save your breath. The deadline expires tomorrow at 12. My hands are tied. The bank is not a charity." Amina felt the old fear, that chill in her stomach that she got every time she entered that office, but then she felt a wrinkled, firm hand on her shoulder. Mama Adewale, still dressed in simple but clean clothes and flanked by the respectable barrister Emeka Okafor, stepped forward. "Good afternoon," Adewale said. The manager looked at her with disdain. "And who is this?" "Her grandmother." "Look, Amina, no matter who you bring, rules are rules." "Exactly, Mr. Obina. Rules are rules," Barrister Okafor said, placing his briefcase on the mahogany desk with a sharp thump. "And the rule says that if the debt is paid, the foreclosure is cancelled." "Paid?" The manager let out a scornful laugh. "With what? With promises? It's almost $3,000, plus late interest and legal fees." Amina looked Mr. Obina in the eyes. She remembered sleepless nights. She remembered the fear of losing Zara's home. She reached into her bag and pulled out a certified check that Barrister Okafor had prepared an hour earlier. She slid it across the desk. "Not promises, Mr. Obinna. It's money." The manager reluctantly took the paper, ready to find an error. But when he read the figure, his eyes widened dramatically. He adjusted his glasses, read again. This is for the entire loan, not just the arrears. You are liquidating all the capital." "That's right," Adewale confirmed. "And I want the property deed free of encumbrance today. There's one more thing." The manager, whose attitude had changed from arrogance to subservience in 3 seconds, nodded frantically. "Yes, madam, whatever you say. Close Amina's savings account at this bank. We are taking the money to the competition. We don't like how you treat hard-working people here. Mr. Obina's face turned red as a ripe tomato. But, madam, it's been a misunderstanding. We greatly value our clients. You valued Amina when you thought she was poor, Mr. Obina. Now it's too late," Adewale declared. They left the bank with the property deed in hand. The afternoon sun seemed to shine brighter. The air smelled sweeter. Amina looked at the sealed paper and burst into tears. But this time, they were tears of freedom. "It's ours, Auntie. The homestead is truly ours," she cried, hugging the paper against her chest. "It's yours, my daughter, yours and Zara's." "Musa can rest in peace," Adewale said, stroking her back. Meanwhile, on the interstate, the atmosphere inside Kunle's luxury car was hell. "You're an imbecile, Kunle," Yemisi screamed, hitting the dashboard with her acrylic nails. "Because of you, we lost everything. Throw her 2,000 naira, you said. Treat her like rubbish, you said." "Shut up," Kunle roared, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles ached. "What did you do?" You told her she smelled bad. You covered your nose. Because she did times smell bad," she shrieked. "How was I supposed to know she had $12 million in her pocket? It's a trap. That old witch set a trap for us. She disinherited us, Yemisi." Kunle's voice dropped to a terrified whisper. "Do you know what that means? The investors? I have loans based on my future inheritance. If they find out there's no inheritance, I'm bankrupt. And me?" Yemisi looked at her hands. "Carlos told me if I didn't pay the credit cards this month, he'd file for divorce." The car devoured kilometers, taking them away from fortune, leading them toward a gray and mediocre future they had carved out for themselves. They had had paradise in their hands and let it go out of disgust for getting their fingers dirty. Back at the homestead, the news spread like wildfire. In small villages, secrets don't exist. Someone saw the check at the bank. Someone saw Barrister Oladele flee. By the next morning, the story of the Cinderella of the homestead and the millionaire beggar was on everyone's lips. Amina was on the porch sweeping when she saw a bicycle approaching. It was a young reporter from the local newspaper, the Northern Herald. "Madame Amina, is it true?" the young man asked, panting. "Is it true that you rescued a millionaire?" Adewale came out onto the porch. She no longer wore rags. She wore a fresh, clean blouse, and her hair was neatly styled in a dignified bun. "I didn't rescue a millionaire, young man," Adewale corrected. "I rescued a human being. Write that." The story was published the next day on the front page. The angel of the road and the lesson of the 2,000 naira. Fame brought curious onlookers, brought vendors who previously hadn't even greeted them, and brought congratulatory letters. But among all the mail Malamadu left 3 days later, there was an envelope with no return address. It was a pale blue envelope with trembling, ancient handwriting. Adewale was sitting in the rocking chair with Zara in her lap, reading her a story when Amina handed her the envelope. "This came for you, Auntie. It doesn't say who sent it, but it has a postmark from a border village, Hope House Hospice." Upon hearing the name of the hospice, Adewale stiffened. Her hand shot out to take the letter. "Hope House," she whispered, and her face paled. "Amina, my glasses, quickly!" Adewale tore open the envelope with nervous fingers. She pulled out a torn sheet of paper written in pencil, as if the writer had no money even for ink. She read in silence. Her eyes filled with tears that began to fall onto the paper, smudging the letters. "What's wrong, Auntie? Bad news?" Amina asked, frightened. Adewale looked up. Her expression was a mix of agonizing pain and infinite hope. "It's her," Adewale said with a thread of a voice. "It's my sister. It's Iyabo." "Musa's mother?" Amina put her hands to her mouth. "She's alive, Amina. She's alive and dying in a hospice for the destitute 4 hours from here." Adewale clutched the letter to her chest. Someone read her the newspaper. Someone read her the story of the millionaire old woman and recognized my name. She says she wants to see me before she closes her eyes. She says she has to tell me the truth about the baby. Adewale stood up, and this time she didn't need her staff. The urgency gave her the strength of a 30-year-old woman. "Prepare the pickup, Amina." "No, wait." She looked toward the homestead fields. Then she looked at Amina. "Call Barrister Okafor. Tell him to rent a private ambulance, the best there is, and to come here. We're going for her. We're bringing her home," Adewale declared. "This family has been broken for 50 years. Today, we're going to glue the pieces back together." Fate had played its last card. The inheritance had saved the homestead, but now money had a more sacred mission: to recover the lost link before death claimed it. "Zara," Amina called, "bring Boli. We're going to find your other grandma." The journey into the past was about to begin, and what they would find in that hospice would change Musa's memory forever. The private ambulance, a white, modern vehicle equipped with the latest medical technology, devoured the interstate like an arrow. Behind it, Amina drove her old Ford pickup, with Barrister Okafor in the passenger seat, as the desert dust rose in furious whirlwinds in their wake. Inside the ambulance, Mama Adewale held Zara's hand tightly. The girl looked out the window, hypnotized by the speed and flashing lights, but the old woman didn't see the landscape. Her eyes were fixed on emptiness, rewinding 50 years of family history. "Is the new grandma far?" Zara asked. "She's at the border, my darling, where the map ends and oblivion begins," Adewale replied, her voice laden with thick melancholy. The journey lasted 4 endless hours. The landscape changed from dry, cultivated fields to the brutal aridity of the border, where the sun beat down mercilessly on cardboard shacks and fading hope. Finally, they reached a dusty village, forgotten by God and government. Hope House Hospice was an old red brick building surrounded by a high wall, topped with broken glass to deter thieves, though inside there was nothing to steal but tired souls. It was a charity run by sisters who performed miracles with donations and faith. The ambulance stopped in the gravel courtyard. Amina jumped out of her pickup, running, her heart pounding in her throat. She helped Adewale out. The old woman adjusted her shawl, straightened her back, and walked toward the entrance. She was no longer the defeated woman from the road. She was a matriarch on a rescue mission. A young sister in a worn but immaculately white habit came out to greet them. "Are you looking for Madame Iyabo?" the sister asked in a soft voice. "I've come for my sister," Adewale said. The sister nodded, and in her eyes was a flicker of compassion. "She has been praying for years for someone to come. She said her family would come before the Lord called her. No one believed her until today." They were guided through long, silent corridors that smelled of bleach, old wax, and cheap medicine. Distant coughs and murmured prayers could be heard. It was the antechamber of death, but a dignified antechamber. They reached the last room in the hallway. The door was ajar. "She's very weak," the sister warned in a whisper. "Her heart barely has the strength to beat. Try not to disturb her too much." Adewale took a deep breath, crossed herself, and pushed the door open. The room was small, with a high window that let in an oblique ray of light where dust motes danced. On a narrow iron bed lay a figure that seemed made of paper and bone. Amina stifled a gasp. The woman in the bed was identical to Adewale, but as if consumed from within. She had the same sharp profile, the same proud Adewale nose, but her skin was translucent, showing the blue map of her veins. Adewale approached slowly, as one approaches a sacred altar. "Iyabo," she whispered. The figure in the bed stirred. Heavy eyelids slowly opened, and there were those eyes, the same eyes as Musa, the same eyes as Adewale. "Adewale." Iyabo's voice was a dry crackle, like leaves stepped on in autumn. "Is it you? Or am I already dead?" "It's me, Charito. It's me, Adewale." She collapsed onto the chair beside the bed and took her sister's skeletal hand. It was cold. "You came?" Iyabo tried to smile, but only managed a grimace of pain. "I knew you would come. I dreamed of you last night. I dreamed Mama was braiding our hair again." The two old women cried in silence, uniting their foreheads. Decades of separation, of stupid pride, of lies and silences dissolved in that contact. Amina remained in the doorway with Zara clinging to her leg. She felt like an intruder in that intimate moment. but she knew she was needed. Iyabo turned her head with effort and saw the young woman in the doorway. Her eyes narrowed, trying to focus. "Who is she?" she asked weakly. She's a nurse." Adewale dried her tears and looked at Amina. She signaled her to come closer. "No, sister, she's not a nurse. She's the answer to all your prayers." Amina approached with trembling steps, knelt beside the bed, coming level with the sick woman's eyes. "Good afternoon, Madame Iyabo. My name is Amina Musa." Iyabo looked at her with confusion. "And why are you here, my daughter?" Amina swallowed the knot in her throat. She looked at Adewale for courage, and her aunt nodded. "Madame Iyabo, I was Musa's wife." The name fell into the room like a stone in a still pond, creating shockwaves. Iyabo let go of Adewale's hand and clutched her chest. Her breathing quickened dangerously. "Musa?" she stammered. "My baby?" "Yes, sister." Adewale intervened quickly, stroking her arm to calm her. "Your son." Iyabo closed her eyes and began to shake her head over and over again as tears streamed down her face. "No, it can't be, Papa. Papa told me he was stillborn. He told me the cord had choked him. He told me not to even name him because he had no soul." The revelation was a physical blow for Amina. Stillborn. That was the lie that had destroyed 2 lives. Musa had been told his mother was a loose woman who abandoned him at the hacienda's gate to run off with a man, and she had been told her son was a corpse. "Damn him!" Adewale cried, forgetting she was in a religious hospice. Her anger against her father, dead for years, revived with ferocity. "He lied to all of us. He gave the child away to some farmhands on the other estate to punish you, to erase your shame." Iyabo opened her eyes, and in them was a pain so deep it seemed bottomless. "He lived?" she asked, with a threat of a voice. "My child lived?" "He lived," Amina assured her, taking her mother-in-law's hand and kissing it with reverence. "And he was a good man, a hard-working, honest farmer. He had your smile, madam, and your eyes. Where is he?" Iyabo tried to sit up, drawing strength from nowhere. "I want to see him. Take me to him. I have to tell him I never forgot him. I have to tell him I loved him every day of my life." Amina lowered her head. Silence returned to the room, dense and cruel. Adewale squeezed her sister's hand. "Charito, Musa awaits us in heaven. He went ahead of us 2 years ago." Iyabo fell back against the pillow. The moan that escaped her throat was the sound of a heart breaking for a second time. "Dead?" she sobbed. "I found him only to know I lost him again. My God, why do you punish me like this?" "No, madam, it's not a punishment," Amina said firmly, raising her tear-stained face. "Musa lived happily. He loved me and he loved this land. And although he believed you had left him, he always kept this." Amina searched in her bag and pulled out a small, old, yellowed embroidered cloth that Musa kept as his most cherished treasure. It was the only thing he had from his origin. Iyabo touched the fabric with trembling fingers. She recognized her own embroidery, the blue flowers she had sewn while waiting for that forbidden baby. "He kept it," she whispered. "And he left something else," Amina said. She turned and extended her hand toward the door. "Zara, come." The child, scared but brave, approached, hugging her rabbit. "Madame Iyabo," Amina said, her voice filled with pride, "I present to you, Zara Musa, your granddaughter." Iyabo looked at the child, saw the dark curls, the firm chin, the curious gaze. It was like seeing herself in a mirror of time. It was seeing Musa reborn. "Come closer, my love," the old woman requested, extending her skeletal arms. Zara looked at her mama, and seeing Amina smile through her tears, she approached the bed. Iyabo touched the child's face, tracing her features with fingers that trembled with adoration. "You are beautiful," Iyabo whispered. "You have my Musa's face." "Hello, new grandma," Zara said. "My mama says you were lost, but now we've found you." Iyabo burst into tears, but this time it was not a cry of death, but of resurrection. She hugged the child with the little strength she had left, burying her face in her granddaughter's hair. "Thank you, my God," she repeated. "Thank you for letting me see this." Adewale stood up, drying her tears with determination. "All right, enough tears for today." She turned to the sister who was watching from the door, moved. "Sister, prepare the discharge papers. We're taking her." The sister blinked, surprised. "But, madam, she requires palliative care, oxygen, strong medicines. I don't think she'll endure the trip in a regular car." "Don't worry about that," Barrister Okafor intervened, appearing behind the sister. "We have an intensive care ambulance waiting outside, and we will hire private nurses 24 hours a day." "Where are you taking me?" Iyabo asked, weak, but with a spark of new life in her eyes. "Home, sister," Adewale said, taking her hand. To Amina's haven, to the land your son worked. You will sleep on Egyptian cotton sheets. You will eat chicken broth made by Amina, and you will watch your granddaughter grow up. But I don't have money, Yabo murmured, the old habit of poverty speaking for her. I do, Adewale said, and smiled. I have enough for both of us. I recovered what Papa stole from us, Charito, and we're going to spend it living like queens for the days we have left. The paramedics entered with a soft stretcher. They lifted Yabo as if she were a feather. As they left the hospice, the afternoon sun bathed the courtyard. Yabo closed her eyes and felt the warmth on her face. For the first time in 50 years, she was not an orphan, nor a mother without a child, nor a destitute. She was a grandmother, she was a sister, she was an Adewale. Amina walked beside the stretcher, holding her mother-in-law's hand. I'm going to tell you everything about him, madam. I'm going to tell you how he laughed, how he sang on the tractor. Musa will come alive in your ears. That's all I want, my daughter, Yabo replied. Only that. The convoy of vehicles left the border village, leaving oblivion behind. The ambulance drove slowly, carefully, carrying the most valuable cargo of all, forgiveness and memory. In the sky, the first stars began to appear, and Amina would swear that one of them shone brighter than the others, winking at her from the immensity, as Musa used to do. The return to Amina's haven was not just an arrival, it was a triumphant procession of the spirit. The ambulance crossed the wooden gate that Amina had already repaired that very morning, just as the sun tinged the horizon with a deep, almost sacred violet. The dogs barked, but this time it was not a warning of strangers, but a chorus of welcome. As the stretcher was lowered, the cool night air hit Yabo's face, bringing with it the scent of damp earth, for Amina had left the sprinklers on to receive her. Welcome home, Mama Yabo, Amina whispered into the old woman's ear as the paramedics delicately maneuvered her toward the house. Is this it? Yabo asked, her eyes wide, trying to absorb every detail in the dimness. He lived here. He lived here. He loved here. And he is still here in every tree and every stone, Adewale replied, walking beside the stretcher like an eternal guardian. They settled Yabo in the main bedroom. Amina had insisted on giving up her own room, the largest and most ventilated. In a few hours, she had transformed it. 1000 thread count. Egyptian cotton sheets that Adewale had ordered from the city. An orthopedic mattress that felt like a cloud, and on the bedside table, a vase with fresh sunflowers and Musa's photo. When Yabo saw the photo from her bed, she let out a sigh that seemed to empty her lungs of 50 years of anguish. Hello, my child, she murmured, stretching out her hand to touch the glass. I've arrived. Your mama has arrived. The following days were a medicine no doctor could prescribe. The presence of the three women under the same roof created a new, vibrant, and healing energy. They were the trinity of resilience. Adewale, the strength and justice. Yabo, the memory and love. And Amina, the present and action. The inheritance money began to flow, not like a raging river, but like a precise and vital irrigation channel. Amina, advised by Adewale, did not buy sports cars or jewelry. The first thing she did was pay the village laborers triple the usual salary to help harvest the crops and repair the barns. Money must sweat to be worthy, Adewale would say, sitting on the porch, supervising the work with her staff in hand like a royal scepter. The sound of the homestead changed. It was no longer the silence of worry. Now, the powerful roar of a new, green, gleaming tractor could be heard, which Amina drove with pride, plowing the hard earth as if it were butter. The hammering of carpenters fixing the roof and the rhythmic drip of a state-of-the-art drip irrigation system miraculously made the fields green again. But the most beautiful change was happening inside the house. Every afternoon, at coffee time, a sacred ritual was celebrated. Yabo, sitting in her wheelchair by the window, would ask for her medicine. Tell me another one, my daughter. Tell me about that time the bull escaped, she would ask with an anxious voice. And Amina, while shelling corn or mending clothes, would begin to weave Musa's story. She would tell her how he laughed out loud when it rained, how he sang to Zara when she was in the womb, how his large hands were soft enough to heal an injured animal. He was stubborn as a mule, though. Amina would laugh, wiping away a tear of nostalgia. Once he got an idea in his head, not even God himself could get it out. Just like his grandfather, Yabo would exclaim, laughing for the first time with a clear laugh, free of phlegm or pain. He has the Adewale character. Adewale, weaving in the rocking chair nearby, would nod. Blood is an underground river, sister. It never stops flowing, even if you don't see it. Those afternoon gatherings brought color back to Iyabo's cheeks. Although her body remained fragile, her spirit grew stronger with each anecdote, filling the emptiness of her memory with Amina's borrowed recollections. Musa ceased to be a ghost to become a living presence in the room. Zara, the little one, was the bridge between past and future. She would run from Auntie Adewale's lap to Grandma Iyabo's chair, bringing them flowers, drawings, or simply sticky sweet kisses. "I have two grandmas," she would boast to the dogs. "One is the boss, and the other is the queen." However, not everything was peaceful. The outside world tried to seep through the cracks. One morning, Barrister Okafor arrived with a frown and a folder under his arm. "Bad news from the city," he said, accepting the coffee Amina offered him. "My children?" Adewale asked, without stopping her knitting, though her needles paused for a second. "They are desperate. They have tried to contest the will 3 times. No judge will listen to them. The evidence of their abandonment is too overwhelming. But what? Kunle is in technical bankruptcy. His creditors have seized his accounts, and Yemisi is selling her designer clothes online to pay for electricity." Amina felt a pang of pity. We should help them a little, Auntie." Adewale slammed her staff on the ground. "No." Her voice resonated with the authority of thunder. "If we help them now, we steal their lesson. They have to learn what hunger is, Amina. They have to learn what it's like to be looked down upon. It's the only way they might someday save their souls. Pain is the chisel that carves conscience." Iyabo, from her chair, placed her hand on her sister's. "You are hard, Kelo. I am just Charito. I was soft for 40 years and created monsters. Now I have to be hard to see if any human being remains beneath the monster skin." The matter was settled. At Amina's haven, they did not speak of the ungrateful. They spoke of the next yam harvest, which promised to be the best in a decade, and of the Thanksgiving feast Amina wanted to organize. "It will be the first time we are complete," Amina said, looking at the 2 old women destiny had given her. "I want to invite everyone, the neighbors who lent us flour when we had none, the village doctor, Barrister Okafor." "Invite whoever you want, my daughter," Adewale said, smiling. "We have plenty of tables and heart for everyone." Life flourished. The cracks in the walls were mended with cement and gold. Pain was diluted in cups of hot chocolate. And at the center of it all, Amina, the farm woman who once thought she had lost everything, realized she was the richest woman in the world. Not because of the millions in the bank, but because every night, when she turned off the light, she heard the quiet breathing of 3 generations sleeping under a secure roof. But capricious fate, like the Nigerian wind, had one last visit reserved, one that would not come with lawyers or threats, but with bowed heads and broken pride. Autumn arrived at the border, not with falling leaves, but with a change in the light that became golden and soft, and a cool wind that forced them to take out their wool shawls. At Amina's haven, however, the climate was of eternal spring. It was the day of the great feast. Amina had decided to call it the celebration of gratitude. It wasn't just an American Thanksgiving. It was an offering of gratitude to the land and to God in the style of her hometown's patron saint festivals. From 4 a.m., the kitchen was the pulsating heart of the house. The aroma was a complex and delicious symphony. The sweet smell of jaggery melting for coffee, the smoky spiciness of bubbling egusi soup in giant clay pots, and the unmistakable perfume of the turkey or guinea fowl, as Amina called it, slowly roasting in the outdoor wood oven. "Slower with the grinder, Amina, you'll curdle the chocolate," Iyabo instructed from her wheelchair, strategically placed not to miss a detail. Although her hands no longer had the strength to cook, her tongue was still that of a culinary general. "And add another pinch of cinnamon." Musa liked it with a lot of cinnamon. "Yes, Mama Iyabo, as you command." Amina laughed, her face smudged with flour and her eyes shining with happiness. Adewale, for her part, was in charge of the decoration. She had ordered long tables brought out to the patio under the shade of the enormous baobab tree that had survived the drought. There were no silk tablecloths or fine china. There were cheerful and simple red and white checkered tablecloths and glazed clay plates. The centerpieces were not imported orchids, but baskets filled with the yams and corn the homestead's land had produced that year. "No false luxuries," Adewale had decreed. "I want this table to smell of hard work." At midday, the guests began to arrive. They were not the cream of society, those who had flattered Adewale when she had mansions and ignored her when she disappeared. They were the salt of the earth. Malam Odu, the postman, arrived with his wife. The laborers who had helped with the harvest arrived in their well-pressed Sunday shirts and hats in hand. Madam Aisha, the owner of the village shop who had given Amina credit when she had no money, arrived. And of course, Barrister Emeka Okafor arrived in his usual suit and a bottle of aged palm wine under his arm. "Welcome," Amina greeted at the entrance, hugging everyone as if they were blood relatives. The music of a local guitar trio filled the air, mixing with laughter and the clinking of glasses. Zara ran among the tables, playing hide-and-seek with the children of the workers in the new dress her two grandmothers had hand-sewn for her. When everyone was seated and the food served, Adewale stood at the head of the main table. She gently tapped her glass with a fork. Silence gradually settled, respectful and expectant. "Friends, neighbors, family," Adewale began. Her voice, amplified by the silence of the countryside, sounded clear and strong. "A few months ago, I was a shadow walking on the road, waiting for death. I was hungry, I was thirsty, and worst of all, my soul was frozen." She looked at Amina, who was sitting to her right, holding Iyabo's hand. "But God has strange ways. He put me in the path of this woman." She pointed to Amina, who did not see my rags, but my humanity. "And thanks to her, today I not only recovered my life, but I recovered my sister." Iyabo raised her glass with a trembling hand, her eyes full of grateful tears. "I toast, not to the money that saved our roof," Adewale continued, "but to the love that saved our lives." "Cheers! Cheers!" echoed the chorus of voices. The party erupted in joy. The egusi soup was perfect. The palm wine burned pleasantly in the throat, and stories flew from table to table. It was the image of fullness, but then the sound of a crude, noisy engine broke the harmony of the guitars. An old, faded car with a broken muffler stopped at the entrance of the homestead, just in front of the open gate. The engine coughed one last time and died with a choked sound. The music stopped, the laughter died down. All eyes turned to the entrance. The driver's door opened with a creak. A man got out. He wore a wrinkled shirt, oversized trousers, and worn shoes. He had several days' beard and deep dark circles under his eyes. It was Kunle, but not the arrogant Kunle of Italian suits. It was a broken Kunle. From the other side, Yemisi got out, without makeup, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, and a simple dress that looked bought from a second-hand market. She looked 10 years older. They walked toward the party, with hesitant steps, hunched like dogs that know they have done something wrong and fear the rolled-up newspaper. Amina instinctively stood up, protecting Zara. Adewale remained seated, but her face turned to stone. Iyabo squeezed Amina's hand. The siblings stopped a few meters from the tables, separated from the celebration by an invisible abyss of shame. "Mama," Kunle said. His voice was a pathetic croak. Adewale didn't move. "What are you doing here? You were not invited. We just wanted to congratulate you," Yemisi stammered, wringing her hands. "And see how you were." "I am excellent, as you can see," Adewale replied coldly. "Better than ever. Is that all?" Kunle took a desperate step forward. "Mama, please, we are doing badly. Very badly. They foreclosed on my house. Yemisi lives in a rooftop room. We have nothing," the guests murmured. Poetic justice was unfolding before their eyes. Those who once looked down on others now looked up from the mud. "You have health," Adewale said, using the same words they had told her. "You have 2 hands. Work." "We tried," Kunle wailed, "but no one will hire me. My reputation is ruined. Mama, we are hungry. Truly, we haven't eaten properly in 2 days." The mention of hunger made Amina's heart, always soft, skip a beat. She looked at the abundance of food on the tables. "Auntie," Amina whispered, "there's a lot of food. 1 plate won't make us poor." Adewale looked at Amina, then at her children. She remembered the day she asked for water and was denied. She remembered the 2,000 naira note on the ground. She slowly stood up, leaning on her staff. She walked until she was in front of them. "You are hungry?" Adewale repeated. "Yes, Mama, very hungry," Yemisi cried. Adewale took a plate from the nearest table, put a generous portion of turkey, egusi soup and rice on it. The smell made Kunle's stomach visibly rumble. Adewale held the plate in front of them. The siblings eagerly extended their hands, but Adewale did not give it to them. She turned and called one of the homestead dogs. "Canelo, Canelo, come." She placed the plate on the ground. The dog wagged its tail and began to eat with relish. Kunle and Yemisi let out a cry of indignation and horror. "Mama, what are you doing?" Yemisi shrieked. "That's for us." "No," Adewale said, looking at them with eyes of steel. "When I was hungry, you treated me worse than a dog. You threw coins on the ground, you denied me water." She approached Kunle, invading his space, forcing him to look her in the eyes. Hunger is a great teacher, my children. You are barely in the first lesson. If I feed you today, I interrupt your learning. You are a monster, Kunle cried, his face red with humiliation and rage. No, Kunle, I am your mother, and for the first time in my life, I am truly educating you. Go find work, go wash dishes, sweep streets, carry boxes like decent people do, earn your bread. And when you know what a plate of beans earned with sweat costs, then and only then, perhaps you can come back to this door. She pointed to the exit with her staff. Now get out, you are ruining my party. Kunle looked at the plate on the ground, looked at the guests who watched him with a mixture of pity and contempt, and understood that he was defeated. No manipulation was possible. The source had dried up. He grabbed Yemisi's arm, who was crying hysterically, and dragged her back to the old car. The engine coughed, started with difficulty, and they drove away, raising a cloud of gray, sad, definitive dust. Amina approached Adewale, who was still looking at the empty road, trembling slightly. It was too hard, Auntie. Adewale turned. Her eyes were moist, but her chin was held high. It was necessary, Amina. Forgiveness is God's, but the lesson is mine. If they ever return, let them return as human beings, not as parasites. She returned to the table, took her glass, and smiled at the guests, though the smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Let the music continue. Nothing has happened here. We just took out the rubbish. The music of the local musicians resumed, a lively and vibrant tune. The party continued until the stars came out, but everyone knew that something profound had changed. Amina's haven was not just a place of cultivation. It was a moral fortress where dignity was not negotiated for hunger or millions. Iyabo, from her chair, squeezed her sister's hand. You did well, Cello, you did well. And under the infinite Nigerian sky, 3 women toasted the roots that sustained them and the rotten branches they had had the courage to cut. The cemetery of Gadadaya village was not a gloomy place. Situated on a gentle hill beneath the shade of centuries-old baobab trees, it looked more like a restful garden than a place of finality. The morning after the feast, as the sun was just beginning to warm the dew on the grass, Amina's pickup stopped in front of the wrought iron gate. They descended in silence. Amina took the wheelchair from the trunk, while Adewale held an immense bouquet of sunflowers, so bright they looked like pieces of the sun itself. They helped Iyabo out. The old woman was pale, fatigued by the previous day's emotions, but her eyes held a feverish gleam of anticipation. Let's go, Mama Iyabo, Amina said, pushing the chair along the gravel path. He's here, under the tree he liked best. They reached a simple limestone gravestone. There was no black marble or weeping angels, just a hand-carved cross and an inscription, Musa, loved the earth and his own. Amina braked the chair. The silence of the field, broken only by the song of a local bird, enveloped the 3 women. Iyabo leaned forward. With trembling hands, she touched the cold stone. Her fingers traced the letters of her son's name, as if by touching them she could touch his face. Hello, my child, Iyabo whispered. Her voice broke, releasing a sob that came from the depths of her empty womb. Forgive me. Forgive me for taking so long. They told me you were gone. They lied to me, my son. My son. Amina knelt beside her, placing a hand on her mother-in-law's shoulder. He never hated you, madam. He always looked at the horizon and said, someday I will know where I come from. Now he knows. You are here. Adewale approached and placed the sunflowers on the damp earth. We are all here now, nephew, Adewale said, looking at the grave with respect. Your mother, your wife, your daughter, and your old aunt who was late to the party, but she arrived. Rest, Musa. They are safe now. I will watch over them. Zara, who had been quiet, clutching her rabbit, approached the gravestone, pulled a smooth white stone she had found in the river from her pocket, and placed it next to the headstone. So you can play in heaven, Papa. Iyabo looked at her granddaughter, then at Amina, and finally at her sister. She smiled through her tears, a smile of absolute peace. It's done, she said. The circle is closed. My chest no longer hurts, sister. The emptiness is filled. Time at Amina's haven began to be measured not in hours, but in harvests. 3 years passed. 3 years where the earth, grateful for the care and water, returned, the kindness multiplied 1,000-fold. The homestead became the main producer in the region, but also something more, a refuge. Amina, with Adewale's financial support, opened a small community kitchen in the old barn. Every day, Migrant laborers and forgotten elders found a plate of hot food and a kind word there. There were no questions, only service. Wealth is not for building walls, but for building longer tables, Adewale would often repeat, who, despite being in her 80s, still managed the business accounts with sharp lucidity. One winter afternoon, Malam Odu, the postman, brought a different letter. It was not from the bank or suppliers. It came from the city, written on cheap paper. Adewale opened it on the porch. It was from Kunle. Mother, I work in a cargo warehouse. It's tough. My back aches every day, and I earn minimum wage. Yemisi is working as a receptionist in a dental clinic. We live in a small apartment. I'm not asking for money. I just wanted you to know that the turkey that night smelled very good, and that you were right. Hunger teaches. Perhaps someday I will be worthy of sitting at your table. Until then, take care. Adewale folded the letter and looked at the horizon. There was no total forgiveness, but there was hope. The lesson had worked. Her children were surviving, becoming human beings through effort. Bad news, Auntie? Amina asked, coming out with a tea tray. No, my daughter, just news, Adewale replied, putting the letter in her pocket. The world is setting itself in order, but the law of life is inexorable. Iyabo, whose health had been a miracle sustained by love, began to fade like a candle at the end of its wick. There was no agony or cold hospitals. One spring afternoon, as she sat in her wheelchair, watching Zara run after butterflies, Iyabo called her sister. Chelo, she said softly. I'm here, Charito. Look how beautiful the sky is today. It looks like the dress Mama made us for our first communion. Yes, sister, it's beautiful. I'm sleepy, Chelo, I think. I think Musa is calling me for dinner. Adewale took her hand. She knew it was time. She didn't cry. She didn't want the last thing her sister saw to be sadness. Go, Charito, go peacefully. Give him a kiss from me. I'll catch up with you later. Iyabo closed her eyes with a smile on her lips, lulled by the homestead's wind and her granddaughter's distant laughter. She passed away peacefully, surrounded by the love that had been stolen from her for decades, and that she had recovered at the end. The funeral was crowded but simple. She was buried next to Musa, mother and son reunited on earth as they were in heaven. Months later, at sunset, Amina and Adewale sat on the porch. Zara, who had already shot up, was reading a book on the steps. The setting sun bathed the homestead in liquid gold. Everything the eye could see was green and prosperous. Auntie, Amina said, breaking the comfortable silence. Sometimes I wonder, what would have happened if I hadn't stopped that day on the road? Adewale swayed gently in her chair. You would have remained poor in money, and I would have died rich in coins, but a beggar for love. She looked at Amina with intensity. That day, Amina, you didn't save me. We saved each other. You passed the test that my children failed, the test of seeing God in the face of the needy. Do you think Musa knew? Amina asked, looking at the sky. Do you think he brought us together? I have no doubt, my daughter. Miracles are not lightning bolts falling from the sky. Miracles are people who decide to be good when no one is watching. Adewale pointed to the field, the house, the reading child. This is your inheritance, Amina. Not the millions in the bank. That is just paper. Your inheritance is this, the certainty that you did the right thing, the footprints you leave on the souls of others. Amina smiled, and for the first time in years, she felt completely free from fear. The future could bring droughts or storms, but it no longer mattered. They had strong roots. Thank you, Auntie Adewale, she said, taking her wrinkled hand. Thank you, niece. Thank you for the water. The sun finished setting, giving way to an infinite blanket of stars over Nigeria. At Amina's haven, the lights came on, warm and inviting, signaling to the world that there lived a family that had turned pain into love and poverty into the greatest of riches.